ref. That's he got the ball. Good morning, Spurs fans all around the world, and welcome back to the IrishHotspur with your boys Dave, Drew, and Steve. And today we are building up for a London derby against the bubble enthusiast West Ham. Absolutely can't wait. But the thing is, it's a bit of a distraction. Everyone's mind, everyone's focus, even team selection today, I presume, will be with one mind on next Thursday night. So again, really hard to know what to expect from Tottenham Hotspur today. But it's a derby game, so I wonder how fans will react if we don't get the right result here today. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. But it's early morning. I had a bit of a late one last night, so a bit tired today. So I'm hoping these boys here on the panel can carry me today. Big up Adrian Schroka. Good to see you, my man. He says we can expect at least 8 changes from Bodo Glimt. Interesting. And he says Jamie Donnelly, 8 goals, 10 assists, 39 appearances, must go on pre-season tour. Look, I think me and Steve was texting me about that last night, and I was sort of saying, look, we don't mind selling on others. Donnelly is the one I want to keep out of them all. I think he's got that something special. Adrian, for sure. Who else have we got in the chat here? We've got Wembley 1 says, morning all, I'd really like to see 2 or 3 of the kids, Mikey Moore included, get a run out today, but I very much doubt it. Unfortunately, I see us getting beat in the league yet again today. Well, Wembley, I've got a few questions about some of the youngsters and why they're not playing, because when Postecoglou has turned to them, they've delivered the goods. We've also got the Sporting Journey. Says good morning to everyone at the Irish Hotspur. Good morning, everyone in the chat. Good morning, good to see you. James Flower, good to see you, Meow Flower. Hopefully you're keeping well. Edwardson in the house, Mr. Edwardson, good to see you. Hopefully you're keeping well. Stevie Fraser says, big up everyone. Be nice to see a performance, but all cohesion will be lost with changes, so expecting nothing. Not the expect nothing that melts down where we lose. It's a free hit for me. Interesting. By the way, where were you for some pro clubs last night, Stevie? We've got Shem Tam, morning, Dave, Sleepy Jack, and the panel. Everyone in the chat. Hope we're all well and having a lovely weekend. Hoping we can bring the Bodo energy to this game. At least try and win today. Absolutely spot on. Got Radfar 4-1 Spurs in the house. Big up my favorite channel. I hope you're all well. I hope we watch the game, but remain calm as we are likely to lose again. The focus is Thursday. Save energy for then. Big up. Do you know what the thing is, Faz Radfar? You know me. Be angry today and I'll be buzzing again Thursday. Big up Niall O'Connor. Great to see you. Danielle as well. Or Dennis San Earl. Good to see you. And then we've got PH family and Lee Neri in the house as well. And then Daniel loves me. Good to see you. We've also got Soren in the house. Good to see you, Soren. Hopefully you're keeping well, my man.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
No, good to see you. Good to see you. But guys, let's get it going. I'll just throw this one out there and just give me feedback on how you feel. Today's London derby against West Ham, let's be honest, feels like a sideshow for Tottenham. All eyes are on Thursday night in Norway, where we take a 3-1 lead into a massive Europa League semi-final second leg. With a spot in the final on the line, Ange Postecoglou faces a massive call today. Does he rotate heavily to protect his key players for Europe? A move which some fans might see as a smart squad management, but other fans could see it as a slap in the face. And also disrespect towards the badge, the rivalry, and the supporters by doing that, given that it's a derby game. Or does he go full strength today because it's West Ham, it's a derby, and pride, passion, respect, and for the shirt still matter? Who wants to take that one?
All right, I'll take it. I'll take it, Dave. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. I don't want to have to pick and choose a first team and a second team, or a first team and a backup team. Like, I'm so disappointed with the fact that we're having to rotate and do all of this bollocks. It's really, really frustrating me. I said 33 points ago or 30 games ago, or wherever it was, that I wanted us to go on some sort of run. And I just think it's a bit shocking, dude. I really do. Like, I get it. All right. I guess it's a worthless competition now, but could we not play for some pride? Like, I'm still quite proud as a Spurs supporter. So I would quite like my team to at least go out there and give a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like, if we were somewhere in the realms of the top half and we were still in the league, we would be expected to be fighting on 2 fronts. And I keep on getting told that this is the strongest Tottenham squad we've had in a while. Now, everyone's supposedly back from injury. So I genuinely, I don't, on the one hand, I can understand, all right, wrap them up in cotton wool. but you could go full-blooded into a tackle in the first 30 seconds of the Bodo Glint on Thursday and get injured anyway. So just go out there. I'm sorry, I hate to say it, just go out there and do your bloody job. Like, what? Do you know what I mean? Them lot up the road, Faz makes a great point. I mean, obviously we're all laughing at them lot up the road this morning, but they didn't have to put out the strongest team. They did. I mean, they got over, so I guess it's an irrelevant point. Yeah, let's just laugh at them. But no, like I'm sick of it. I really am. I want something resembling a performance today. I just need some people leaving it out there on the pitch. All right, if we get done, we get done. I'll just have to grin and bear it. I'll freaking hate it, but they've got to leave the badge on the pitch.
Yeah. No, 100%. Look, there's a way to lose. You know what I mean? Like, if we go out there and we're all guns blazing, the players that are selected to go out there today are fighting, and they lose, I think many fans can tolerate that. But it's the way we've lost, in recent weeks, where it looks like half of these players aren't trying to leg out there in the Premier League games. And I mean, I actually find it disrespectful towards fans because, some of them that are playing are backup players, squad players, ones that have a point to prove. And, they're going out there not trying to leg and we're being absolutely destroyed. I don't think it's good enough from them. But I do want to move into a conversation about them in just a couple of questions time about some of these backups and stuff like that. Because honestly, I don't think it's good enough. And I sort of rely with you, Drew. Everyone says that his squad is, better than what it is. And I'm just sort of looking at it. I'm like, I don't think it is, because the majority of games we've lost this season has been when we've had to rely on the squad players and stuff like that. But Stevie, we'll go to you and then we'll did someone want to come in there?
No, I was just going to say quickly, but I can wait till Steve's finished.
Okay.
Yeah.
To Drew's point, I mean, even after the mediocre summer transfer window that we had, and by the way, Dave, I actually aligned completely with you on the takes of the summer transfer window. But that being said, I still thought this team had enough talent to at least repeat the 5th place finish that we ended up last year. But I had them somewhere between 5 and 8 somewhere, where you were going to see competitive football throughout the course of the season, where you would see a string of maybe 3 to 5 matches unbeaten. But that being said, I still didn't think they were good enough necessarily to finish in the top 4. But I thought we were going to see a squad that was going to at least perform up to their standards. And it has been a complete 360 to what the back of these what these players are capable of doing. And I'm right there with Drew. I mean, at the very least, especially when it came to the injury crisis and it came to the need to play heavy squad players, the idea that these guys would actually come out and just not care, not try, not put their best put forth their best effort. When you see these performances against teams like Wolves, Ipswich, Nottingham Forest, and Leicester City, it just absolutely I can't. My brain doesn't compute the level of not giving a shit against teams that you should be routinely at least padding your points total against. The fact that we're this deep into the season and we have not even reached 40 points on the season, absolutely is mind-boggling. And it actually gets back to the question of whether or not these players are who we thought they are. Did we put them in this? Did we put them in this category of being, what's the best word to describe this? Have we put them not necessarily in a world-class category, but at least in a competent Premier League vaulted status? Or are these guys like really more on the line of like championship level quality? You know what I mean? If you can't give us a performance against Leicester City, against Ipswich, against Wolves, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like maybe
I think we can all, sorry, just to cut across you, Steve. I think we can all agree that had it not been for the fact that the bottom 3 were as bad as they are, we would be.
Yeah.
I mean, if there were more points on the table for any of them, I'd be very concerned we'd be going down because this lot have the bottle.
I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we had to rely on Arsenal beating, Ipswich to officially take us out. Yeah, to take us officially out of a relegation battle. Like that deep, we were that deep into April, where that still was up in the air. Now, granted, I guess we did just enough, but that just tells you exactly how bad this team is. rotation, no rotation, injuries, no injuries, man. Like that's the thing. I look at this and I look at this match today, and I'm like, wouldn't be surprised if we saw 8+ rotation today. Nah, not really.
But do you know what? Even if the manager does rotate, half of them players would be begging for minutes. You know what I mean? That he picks and stuff like that. Because I almost feel like, when a manager rotates here at Tottenham, everyone says he's surrendering the game and stuff like that. But I want to move on to that in just a moment. I want to come down to Soren first. Soren, based on recent league performances, when we've rotated heavily, we kind of know what to expect. So we'll probably know what to expect today as well. A side that might treat this more like a run out than a proper derby, shall we say. But this is West Ham. This is a London derby. It still means everything to us, the fans, at least. Is it delusional for fans to still expect passion, fight, and pride from the players today? Or is it fair to accept that this is simply a necessary sacrifice in pursuit of European glory? Sorry?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty loaded question. But to jump back to the rotations, look, I mean, if you're taking the whole spine out of your team and you're putting in like basically your second team, why is it okay to tell us that when we play other teams that have got injuries and suspensions and it's their second team, it's only their second team? And when it's out us, all of a sudden it's, well, no, we should still be winning. I just don't get the argument with that. That if you've changed 8 players, how many? I mean, there aren't many squads out there that have 8 good players on the bench or in the squad as good as the first 11. So you're always going to be a weakened team. But going on today's game, look, it's one of those that, do you play the likes of Van der Ven, Romero, Vicario, Kulu, Solanke, all your first teamers? You get an injury, and all of a sudden, everyone's up in arms. Oh, you should have rested him. And then if he doesn't play him, you should have played him. So for
that's
me,
what I'm asking you. What do we expect today? Because I think there are some fans that are going to say, look, I don't give a shit about Thursday night. It's a derby. It's West Ham. You play what's in front of you. Let's get that job, and then we can think about Thursday night. I want to see passion. I want to see fight. But the reality is, you look at the Premier League games that we've seen since we've come into the knockout stages of Europe. It's just not there. Everyone is saving themselves.
Yeah, I mean, but suppose it's a tough one because, look, as fans, we expect them to turn up every single game, and there shouldn't be any excuses. And let's look at it another way. If you've got one chance of silverware this year, and you get an injury, you're not playing in that semi or that final, it's a natural thing to, and you're not playing for anything else in the league other than pride, then you kind of, which is the bigger goal? Winning a trophy or a little bit of pride for finishing 11th instead of 13th or whatever? I mean, look, for me, I'm one of those that I expect them to go every single game and win. Every season we're going unbeaten as far as I'm concerned, because there's no reason we shouldn't win every game. But in reality, if I was one of those players today, as much as I'd want to go out there and show that I'm, worthy of the badge and worthy of the game, I'd have half my mind on Thursday night, and then half, the other half on the final, hopefully. So I get the reasons, but look, us fans are we're a different mindset to the players. I mean, I think James Maddison got a lot of stick the other night for coming out and saying, well, they and them and us and blah, blah, blah. And I kind of get where he was coming from a little bit, because as much as we think the players don't give a shit, I do believe they do actually. They maybe don't care as much as us fans do, which is naturally. I mean, you're going to get some players. Sonny will hurt. Kane would have done. All those that have maybe come up through the ranks would hurt. But those that you're employing them to be professional, which they all are. I mean, there isn't many that turn up on the field and don't try. I mean, we know there are some. I'm not saying that, but a lot of those players will hurt, and they didn't want to go to Liverpool and lose can't remember what the score was. Was that irrelevant?
You know,
but they were.
But did they care though? I mean, seriously, did they care? I mean, when these players came back from injury, right? We were already out of 2 domestic cup competitions with only Europa left on the schedule, and it almost feels like these players, whether they did care or not, were a little tentative to actually go out and try for fear of being re-injured again, right? And so maybe they weren't necessarily putting forth their best effort.
Let's look at it another way then. So before that game, we played Liverpool a couple of times this season. We got thumped in the semi-final by them.
Sure.
How many other teams have thumped us like that? Liverpool are the best team in the Premier League. And to go there with a full squad, we've still got beaten. I mean, it's one of those that had it been Bournemouth winning us 5-1, then I think there's an argument. To go to Liverpool on the day they can win the league with all their support, all their fans absolutely up for it. As much as 5-1 is a disgrace, and I get that, we had quite a weakened team, but there weren't many fans. There was a couple of us pretending we were confident to go there. There weren't many Tottenham fans that actually believed we'd go there and get a result. There weren't many fans that kind of said, yeah, we're going to lose 5-1. There were some fans that were saying we're going to get absolutely thumped. And they're the ones then that came out and moaned that we'd got thumped. So where do we go with this? That you play Liverpool on their day, they are unplayable. They are an absolutely fantastic team. On our day, we might have kept up with them a bit, but we'd have probably still lost against them. So I think we've got to look at reality.
Do you know where the argument comes in for me? I can understand if there's a couple of players that are playing that might, be sort of saving themselves for the week, for midweek. But a lot of the players we've picked in Premier League games recently, take the Liverpool one aside. I'm talking about Wolves, teams like that. I'm sorry, but half of them players probably won't even get off the bench, are not even getting off the bench in Europe. So I don't understand why them players are saving themselves. Surely, it's not too much to expect these players to play like their Spurs careers on the line. Not even that, but even trying to get into the European squad midweek as an incentive. And the only way by doing that is by performing on the Premier League games on the weekend. If you're a backup player, you don't have the right to fucking sack in a Premier League game or not try as hard, because you should be fighting for your future at this fucking club. And that's where my problem comes into it. I think the squad is getting way too much of a pass. This season to a large degree, and it really pisses me off. You need a strong squad to be able to compete. But at Tottenham, it seems like these squad players feel like they can take days off whenever they want. Or it's like, it's okay, I'll just roll out, half do my job. Doesn't really matter about the result. I'll still get paid anyway. And I'm absolutely fed up with it. We shouldn't see some of the drop-offs that we're seeing, at Tottenham Hotspur this season. I'd still argue there's still plenty of room for these squad players to be at it, get in at it, turn up overboard, show a little bit of quality, show a little bit of steel, but they don't. They all just sort of fucking come in and sack it off, and I'm absolutely fed up. Before we get into them squad players, though, big up Faz Radfar, Carabao and FA Cup tie shows second squads are very weak. That's absolutely fair enough. Faz Radfar, look, I think our squad, look, everyone knows me. I've been on it since the summer. I don't think the squad was good enough this season to come in and compete for all honours and stuff like that. I've seen trouble on the horizon, but big up Faz. I don't think our squad is as good as many people make it out to be. I think there'll be a bit of a shock once we change managers on that one, Faz. But guys, I do want to ask before we get into these squad players and stuff like that. Should we be booed? Sorry, did someone want to come in there? No,
okay. I think you were echoing.
Sorry. Should we be worried about the long-term consequences of Spurs treating the Premier League like an afterthought? Not just in terms of our reputation as a club, but the standards it sets for future seasons, the message it sends to potential signings, that it's somehow acceptable to switch off in certain matches. Or is it actually refreshing, to caveat, because I know Sarah might say this, is it actually refreshing to see Spurs, a Spurs manager, fully prioritise a realistic shot at silverware, even if it means sacrificing the league. So I just want to find out where people sort of stand on that one. Is it, the message that it sends out, are we worried about the long-term consequences, or is it actually refreshing? Because many fans have said down the years before, just prioritize the cup competitions, and have been angry when managers haven't. So I want to know where people stand on this. And look, we'll start with you on this one, Stevie, and we'll work our way around.
It's
Just go and
interesting,
grab
right?
a quick drink.
I mean, it's interesting on one hand from Ange Postecoglou's situation, from that stance, he's doing everything he can to win a trophy. He's still fighting for a job, right? He's still in a position where the Europa League is, the Europa League. It's basically all or nothing with the Europa League as far as his future employment is concerned. But here's the rub, though: by allowing this team to essentially sack off the Premier League, it's doing himself a disservice, right? Because he's going to have to explain this in future job interviews of why he allowed his players to have such a low expectation when it came to the Premier League, even when the season was lost as far as the Premier League was concerned, right? He's still going to have to explain this. But from a player's standpoint, this is potentially harmful as well too, especially when you look at some of these top players, right? If I'm a director of football and I'm looking at this, that's the first question about whether or not they're okay with shutting off at certain points, because they're either concerned about injury, or they're concerned or they're just putting all their efforts into one competition, right? It makes me want to question about whether or not they're capable of showing up week after week after week after week and putting in that effort. That's the rub when it comes to this. As far as I'm concerned, man, that's the thing. It's like Drew, Soren, Dave, everyone in the chat that takes their time week after week after week to follow this. All the supporters all the away supporters that spend their hard-earned money going to travel to watch this team. And week after week, especially in the Premier League, we see these type of performances, man. That's going to be forever etched in all of our minds. Yeah, like this has been a lost season, but we can remember some of these performances, and we're gonna sit there and we're going to look at guys like James Maddison, potentially even a Christian Romero, and just kind of remember, like, do you remember that season? Do you remember that train? Do you remember that train wreck of a season when they were still at full strength, but they mailed it in against Leicester City. They mailed it in against Wolves, and some of these backup players, that were given run out in the league, and all of a sudden, they themselves were also treating it like a preseason summer friendly. That has lasting memory as a supporter. I mean, that's the thing. I don't know how you guys are, but I remember these. I remember these moments quite a bit, and especially in big games in future seasons when we actually are in a cup semifinal, or if we are kicking up the league and we're playing Arsenal in a pivotal North London derby. I'm going to look back at some of these players and ask themselves, really, are these guys capable of showing up for the biggest matches? That's the lasting memory of these type of performances.
Yeah,
Sorry?
I think it's one of those that this just shows the fickleness of a lot of fans, though, doesn't it? This question that should we prioritize the league or should we prioritize the cup? I mean, I'm one that always says I want to finish top four. I want that Champions League.
Yeah,
and
I prioritize. Yeah. I prioritize all competition.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we had this question at the end of last season, beginning of this season, halfway through last season. Which is more important? Do we prioritize the cup or do we prioritize the league? And you've got some of us saying, why should we choose one or the other? And then you've got others saying, well, we haven't won a trophy for 20 or however many years.
Soren, as an example, the FA Cup or the Carabao Cup last year against Fulham when Postecoglou made all the changes. Fans went absolutely ballistic saying he should be prioritising the cup competitions. Now this season, everyone's in uproar. We're prioritising the cup competitions.
Exactly. That's where I was about to go with it. When we look at playing Fulham last season, I think I was talking to you on one of these chats, and we were going ballistic of how has he made so many changes. Why is it, this early in the cup competition, why are we prioritising one or the other? It's stupid. And you had a lot of fans back then saying, well, we need to prioritise the cups. Forget the league, a cup is more important. Beginning of this season, a cup, fans were saying, don't care where we finish. Doesn't matter where we finish as long as we win a cup. Well, we're actually in another semi-final, 3-1 up, hopefully heading to a final, and all of a sudden it matters where we finish in the league. Now, should we prioritise the league or I don't think it's a case of that we're prioritising the cup over the league now. I think it's the league's gone. It doesn't matter with the league anymore.
Don't let Drew hear that, or you're going to send him into
no,
meltdown.
and I don't mean that's an excuse for throwing today's game. I don't mean it that way. What I mean is, we're not playing for anything in the league. It's not like we're seventh, eighth, ninth, and we're prioritising a cup. The league is gone. We can't do anything about it. So what is the most important thing left this season? We've only got the cup to play for. There is nothing else to play for. If we go out on Thursday night, the season's over. All we're playing for is a little bit of pride for the fans. Well, if I was the owner, I mean, look, let's not forget, everybody slates Daniel Levy off because all he wants to do is finish top four. That's the most important thing. Well, obviously, it looks like Daniel Levy has said to Ange, you go win that trophy. Because if you don't, you've gone. It's the only way we're getting into Champions League. So that's probably why Daniel's quite happy to be where we are in the league, because there is still chance of Champions League, because that is the most important thing in his life, is the checkbook. So all of a sudden, we're kind of switching our, where we're going to head this season, and the fans still aren't happy. So I just, for me, as much as I do not want to lose today, I do not want to lose any single match.
It's a derby.
Well, it doesn't matter who we play. I don't want to lose that game today. We could be playing chuffing, I don't know, Wimbledon, we're not playing Wimbledon because they played yesterday up at Grimsby, didn't they? But, we could be playing anybody. I don't want to lose that game. But there is a little thing in the back, that's saying, do we risk all our first team players? Now, in theory, yes, because we want. Yeah, they probably are sick of 20 years. But so what is it then? Do we want to put everything into the cup, or do we put a full squad out today, risk getting an injury, and then you've still got the fans coming out whinging that, he's played the full team squad, we shouldn't have been playing that, or he was only supposed to play 20 minutes instead of 25, so that's why he's injured, or whatever. Look, if at the end of the season, Ange Postecoglou has won the European Cup, who gives a shit what score it was against Liverpool or West Ham today? Because we will have won a trophy, and he will be, whether we like it or not, one of the most successful managers we've had for a long, 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 long time. There's under Daniel Levy, there's only one other manager has won a trophy, and that was the Carabao Cup. That does not compare to the Europa Cup. This is the biggest thing in modern day history for Tottenham Hotspur since the final of the Champions League Cup, which, so if we go on and win this cup today, not today, sorry, in a couple of weeks' time, most of the fans will not give a shit whether we've won West Ham today or not, whether we've lost against Liverpool and they won the league. The only thing that will matter is that trophy in that cabinet.
No, look, if we put the trophy in the cabinet, I think many people would be absolutely delirious. That's for sure. I do want to take just a couple of comments here, though, just quickly. Where has it gone? Tony Rodriguez, good to see you, says, amount of fans giving Ange a free pass to just lose every game. It's disgusting. He has literally made losing acceptable within the fan base. Thing
who's giving him a free pass, though?
That's what I was going to say. I don't think people are giving him a free pass. Everybody wants to die gone. Everyone's unhappy that we're losing these these Premier League games, Tony. So I think it's a very small minority on that one. But what I will say to what you were speaking about there, Soren, I think hopefully maybe this season to a degree serves as maybe a blessing in disguise, to us fans, because in years gone by, I heard lots of takes, about, look, I don't really care about the league. I just want to win a trophy, prioritize the cup competitions. And then in other years gone by, people have been angry that managers haven't prioritized cup competitions and stuff like that. And for me, I just think, the reality of, sacking off one competition to favour another, I don't think many Spurs fans can stomach it. So I think now that we've had the reality, I think, going forward, I think hopefully the demands from the fans will be to have a squad to compete on all four fronts, because we can't keep doing this where we're picking and choosing where we want to perform. It doesn't send out a good message to any potential future manager, any potential future players, and it certainly doesn't send out a good message or set a good standard for anyone around this squad, because I'm telling you now, I think it'll have a knock-on effect going into next season where they're sort of like, this game doesn't really matter too much. I just think it's a bad standard to set out, and look at the reputation that Tottenham have took, this season in terms of the amount of losses in the Premier League and stuff like that. So, fans are definitely not happy with it, but it's just not been a good season. And like I said, I just hope it serves as a blessing in disguise going forward, that everyone now, it's all four fronts, not just one or the other. We can't keep doing this as a football club. If we want to be serious, you've got to compete on all four fronts. And, I've heard Drew say this, that, we're sitting here in potentially, this summer where we're going, oh, well, we have to sell before we buy because there's not much cash flow because of where we're finishing the league. But I remember Drew saying, months ago, and he's brought this up again yesterday when I was on Stevie's show with him, that if we finished higher up the league and we didn't sack off the league, we might have got some more prize money through league finishing, which meant we wouldn't be in this situation come this summer. So that just goes to highlight that we can't afford to pick and choose what competitions we want to perform in as well. It's now about getting a squad together and competing on all four fronts. Big up Just a Harmless Potato. Hopefully you're keeping well, member for 10 months. I'm not sure whether there was supposed to be a message there. If there was, Just a Harmless Potato, put it into the chat and I will bring it up, my man. But look, let's keep it moving. I do want to head down to Drewski. Drew, every time a manager rotates the squad at Tottenham Hotspur, fans accuse him of throwing the game. We talk about rotation as though it's an automatic sign of surrender. Instead of blaming the manager, shouldn't we actually be asking why so many of our fringe players fail to show any fight, urgency when given the chance? Could it be that the real problem lies within the players treating these opportunities like a walk in the park, and that many of our squad players act entitled to minutes instead of actually having to fight and earn them? Because the manager, this isn't just about Postecoglou. This is about Jose Mourinho. This is about Conte. Anytime they've gone to rotate, everyone, as soon as we lose the game, everyone goes, oh, he threw that game. Look at the amount of rotations. And it's like, there has to be an understanding. If we want to compete on all four fronts, that's 60-odd games. A manager has to rotate at some time. He has to change players up at some time. But automatically, and I see this as a common theme, as soon as a manager rotates, every fan is sitting there going, oh, well, we've surrendered this game. That shouldn't be the case, right?
No, I don't think so. I mean, as I say, I'll go back to my previous little rant. I'm pretty disgusted that as Tottenham Hotspur football team, a football club, we can't play 2 games a week. Yeah, like it just seems absolutely preposterous to me. Like I think I've been pretty clear on this channel, on other channels. Like I was playing the injury violin. I was fully accepting of the fact that at times this season, this squad has been absolutely decimated. And I gave them as much leeway as I felt was fair. But let's go. I'm sorry to keep harping on about it, but we started to get players back when there was still 33 points to play. Yeah. And now I'm looking at the running of our fixtures that we had when we're, throwing away 2 points at home to Bournemouth because we end up drawing 2-2, and we were 2-0 down in that game at one point. Do you know what I mean? Fulham 2-0, Chelsea, who were there for the taking, 1-0. All right, we get by Southampton 3-1, Wolves 4-2, Nottingham Forest at home 2-1, and this happens after every time we go out and play in Europe. We can't win a game after a international break. We can't win a game going into an international break. Like, at what point? Like, I keep on getting told this is the strongest squad we've had. This is the best squad we've had. And all right, injuries aside, these last few weeks, I think, I think they point to a different, something different. I don't think this squad's strong enough. I don't think this squad's, big enough. We're shy 2 players at least. But the fact that, like Christian Romero, should he not be playing? I mean, I get the VDV thing, and I get the need to wrap a couple of players up. But wholesale changes? And I know, all right,
But
people
the
say
thing
there's
is,
nothing.
though, Drew,
People say
is
there's
this
nothing
where,
to play for. Go on.
is this not where the club have to rest, sort of back what they've given Postecoglou behind Romero and Van de Ven? Because, many people would say, get rid of Romero. Danzo's fine to come in. He'll do a job, if we sell Romero. And look, there are lots of people out there that says Ben Davies deserves his new contract. And that the reality is, they're going to play games like this when you are resting players for Europe. And a lot of people tend to go after the manager for that. And I just don't think it is. I think, at the end of the day, you've built a squad for a reason. You can't expect Romero and Van de Ven to play every single game. And the reality is,
Right.
If you do have a European semi-final, most managers at most clubs, if they have a European semi-final coming up, will rest their key players and their best players. So this is where you rely on the likes of your Ben Davies, the likes of your Danzo. People that, Danzo, Danzo I like, but Ben Davies, people go, can we not play Romero for a half? Well, then stop urging this guy to be given a new contract if you don't trust him. You know what I mean? This is the reality of having a squad. He's a part of your squad. You've got to use him.
Right. I mean, I feel like, look, in this particular game, and I'm talking to West Ham specifically, and this situation that we're in at the moment, our squad, I can understand resting VDV, but Romero's played how many games this season? You're telling me he can't play a few more games back to back? Like, why have we got? Because I'm sure he's probably sitting there thinking, I'd actually quite like to play. So why? I just don't understand the wholesale changes. And I just think if we had a squad, and I agree with you, I just don't think he's been given the tools. I don't think many managers have been given all of the tools to get all of the job done. But my problem is I keep on getting fed this line that we're stronger than we were. And what I'm seeing does not show me that.
Yeah.
And I just, that's the most frustrating thing to me. Like, and I get, all right, Kulusevski's picked up an injury. James Maddison, again, another injury he's picked up. I get it. But the point I made earlier, if we were in the top 6, or if we were in 8th place, 7th place, and we were still vying for Champions League through the league, and we were in the semi-final, are you telling me we'd be sacking one of those off, or would we be trying? Do you know,
well, people act.
like
This
you
is the
can't
thing.
pick
People
and
act
you
like
can't
we're
pick
sacking
and
it off.
choose. You can't pick and choose what you want to do based on. I don't know. Sorry, what were you saying, Dave?
No, but this is the thing. Like, when you make rotational changes, people go, he's sacking it off. He's not. He's using other players in the squad. That's what they're there to do. They're there to come in and pick up the slack. And if they can't do that, then we should be asking a lot more questions of them rather than going to the manager. Why are you making so many changes? We can't expect the same 11 players to play week in, week out. At some point, you are going to have to make changes. And when we make changes, we end up losing the majority of the games as soon as we make changes. It was the same under Conte. It was the same under Jose. And then all of a sudden, people go mad at them for making all these changes. But the reality is they have to at some point. And it's like, but then in the same breath, half the people would defend half of the squad players, down the years. Oh, well, the guy hasn't performed for 3 years. Yeah, but Dave, let's give him another chance. He gets another chance. He doesn't perform. We lose a game. And then people go mad at the manager. And it's sort of like, well, hang on here. I'm not being funny, but if I'm a fringe player and I'm sitting on the squad, I'm waiting for these players to take a rest so that I can come in and be given an opportunity. And when I'm given that opportunity, I'm doing everything I can to put myself in the manager's thoughts for the first team. And I'm sorry, but I just don't see a lot of backup players when they come to Tottenham down the years have that hunger, have that desire, have that fight. It's almost like they just roll themselves out there, go through the motions, and they're like, well, I'll sit back till I'm called again. And it's like, I think that in general, fringe players at Tottenham have a very poor attitude. And I would argue to a certain degree.
Is it not on the...
I would argue.
Sorry, go on.
No, sorry, just I'd argue to a certain degree. Have they actually let us down more than what the manager has? Because the reality is, even when we have injuries, they have to come in and look at the amount of games we started losing and stuff like that as soon as these guys started stepping in. And it's a common theme every single time. And I'm absolutely fed up with it. We can't keep giving these fringe players a free pass because it was the same. When we had Conte, when we had Jose, it was their problem, and I'm absolutely fed up with it. At what point do we start looking at the fringe players and go, what are you going to offer us? You're getting 80K a week. When are you going to fucking perform?
But Dave, I mean, as much as I think you're talking absolute sense there, you've also got to look at it another way. We can't, if we're going to rotate 1 or 2 players, maybe 3. You don't rotate 8 or 9 players and expect the same results as your first team. This is the problem. It's like Drew said, and I think Steve said it, and probably yourself. there are a few players in the squad that probably need to be rested today. Van der Ven being one. Kulu, do not rest him. He needs to play because he's got to get some form back. Romero, I think Romero's the problem because do you play him knowing he's going to be thinking of that semi-final and wanting to play? Is he going to play? Is his head going to be in the right place today? We've got Danso. I think he's probably long-term replacement for Romero because I think Romero's going. So do you play Danso? Now, if you play Danso, do you play Van der Ven? Because you don't really want to swap both your back players out. Do you play Romero and say, right, you go out there, and if you don't play well today, you're not playing Thursday anyway? That's the way I would do it. But I think when we're talking of rotation, we've got to split it two ways. We can't say rotation and compare rotating 2 or 3 players to 8 or 9 players, because this is the problem. Look at the fans that are complaining about today's match or Liverpool. They're the same ones that were bringing the argument, well, he didn't rotate, so we've all of a sudden got loads of injuries. Now he's going to rotate. Oh, we can't rotate because these players should be playing. So which is it? Which do we want? For me, we rotate 2 or 3 players that might play on Thursday, give them a chance to play today. And the spine of the squad almost has got to be what might play on Thursday. But certain players like Van der Ven, maybe Solanke even, or Richarlison, whichever one of them, they're the ones that you need to rest today to make sure and bring them on for 20 minutes at the end of the game, maybe. But certain players have to play today as a spine, and the others. I mean, I'd rest Vicario today. I'd be putting Kinski in today because Vicario needs a kick up the arse as well, because he's I don't know whether his head's not in it again or what, but he's made some howlers recently.
No, look, he has. He's made a lot of howlers recently. Actually, he hasn't really come back from his injury too well whatsoever. Look, in a normal season, I would sort of agree with you. 3-4 rotations max. But I think if you're in a situation we're in this season where no one in the club seems to trust the physio department, I'm sorry, that's where you are going to see these amount of changes. You don't want to take the gamble of putting Romero out there today. All of a sudden, he pulls up with his foot injury or whatever. You don't back the medical team to be able to do enough to get him out there Thursday. So, to a degree, if you're Postecoglou, you start looking at, well, I have to protect my best players, for Thursday. My job's on the line. I have to protect my best players. And that's where, okay, I'm relying on you guys. What are you going to give me? I'm sorry. If any of these fringe players, don't show up today in a North London derby and show a bit of pride, and not only that, look to fucking put themselves in the team for Thursday night, then I'm sorry, they don't deserve to wear the badge going forward. They just do not. I'm sorry. Correct. At some point, we have to demand more of these squad players. We can't just go, well, if he makes these rotations, it's hard to expect them to fucking get up to speed and play with each other. I can expect that for the first 10, 15 minutes. Yeah, fine, in terms of cohesiveness, runners and stuff like that. But we see misplaced points, passes. It's so disjointed. I'm sorry. These players are training day in, day out together. They should know how to fucking pass a football.
We see those bad passes with the first team.
He's just not good enough.
Yeah, but we see those bad passes with the first team. It's not just the fringe players
nowhere
that can't pass
bad.
a ball.
Sorry, it's nowhere near as bad as it is when these backup guys step out. Nowhere near as bad.
What's interesting, right, is these squad players are not just there just to be, squad players, right? Their job is to maximize their opportunity and let Ange Postecoglou know that they can trust him, right? When we went into that injury crisis and we were relying on it, their job not only was to show up on the day and give a shit, but they're trying to break into the starting 11. That's their job. They're not just there to to provide cover. They're there to do a job, right? When we came out of the injury situation, which players can Ange Postecoglou point to and say, you know what, I trust that guy. That dude is capable of starting for us week in and week out. Jed Spence, maybe. Lucas Bergvall, maybe. You know what I mean? But outside of that, how many players actually let down their manager to a point where he's looking at him and is like, well, I can't play him every single week. I can't do that. And that to me is the biggest sign that these guys are depending on the opponent, depending on the week, they can't be relied upon. That's in the large sense of this. And when we're coming into a game like West Ham, when we're talking about heavy rotation, at some point you have to ask yourself, well, wait a second, is this going to be more of a liability if we rotate 8? Because I can't rely on them to even show up on a day against a team like West Ham.
And what annoys me is, let's not forget, Ben Davies went to Daniel Levy personally to get rid of Nuno because he was told under Nuno, you are a part of the B squad, basically the backup brigade. He didn't like that. He went to Daniel Levy saying, you shouldn't be saying that, we're part of the B squad, this, that, and the other. You're alienating us. We should all be a part of the squad. But then when they're given minutes, they just let every manager down. And I'm absolutely fucking fed up with it. How can you go and sack a manager because you don't want to be called a squad player? But then when we rely on you, you're shit and you don't take your minutes, which makes you become a squad player. It's absolutely mind-boggling. I'm sorry. But we've got to expect more of these squad players. Can't keep giving them free passes by just blaming everybody else but them. At some point, they have to take accountability. If you haven't come to Tottenham to try and get into the first team, then why the fuck are you here? I'm
That's
sorry,
exactly
but,
right.
I hear it all the time with Ben Davies. Look, give him his 80K a week. He's grand. He's happy to be a backup player. Yeah, that's half the fucking problem. You shouldn't be happy to be a backup player. You should be using your training sessions week in, week out, any bit of game time you get to try and lay down a marker for the guy that's ahead of you. That's what you should be doing. Not sitting there going, it's grand, I'll just roll out for my 80K, go through the motions, and I'll sit back again till I'm called upon. I'm absolutely fed up with it. I'm fed up with it. And then when a manager does say, okay, you're a squad player, I'll treat you like what you are. No, I don't like that. Get out my fucking football club. I'm fed up with it. We've got to start demanding more of these guys. If not, we're going to keep suffering this every single season. Under Conte, when we suffered injuries, he had to rely on the squad for a certain period. And then as soon as he did, we were out of nearly all the cup competitions. And then when you get your first team players back, they're looking around going, boys, what the fuck? What have we got left to play for? We left where we were up here. We were still in the cup competitions. Now we're out of everything and we're down here. What the fuck? You know what I mean? Then they come back demotivated and shit like that. It has a knock-on effect. You listen to the class of 92 and you listen to that Man United team. You listen to the likes of Roy Keane, Gary Neville, people like that. The respect they have for the likes of your Phil Nevilles, your Darren Fletchers and players like that, who when they needed a rest, that they knew competently they could sit out. These guys would step in, win the game, and keep them on course for winning. They have so much respect for them squad players. They always take time out to especially mention them squad players and the job that they do, the fact that they can rely on them coming in and stuff. At the end of the day, squad players play 20 to 28 games a season when you're in Europe. That's a lot of games. And that's a lot of games we end up throwing away when these guys come in. It can't keep going down this road. It just can't. It's our ambitions that suffer at the end of the day.
And if you're a player, let's not mince words. A lot of these guys are playing for their spots next year. The last thing you want to do is leave a lasting impression. If it's going to be Ange Postecoglou, great. He already knows exactly who you are, what you're about. But if it's a new coach, you actually want to finish the season as best as you can. You want to be bulletproof, because whether it's your future at Tottenham or some other team, understand that scouts are watching you. And if this is the lasting impression, you're not going to do yourselves any favor. If you're a fringe player in the Premier League and this is the effort that you have, chances are pretty good that you'll probably end up in the Championship instead of the Premier League, in a status of what you feel. And that to me not only disrespects the team, but it also disrespects the game. And that's, to me, that's the biggest issue that I have.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the only issue with that one, Steve, is I don't think Postecoglou is going to be here next year, is it?
I don't either.
Well,
but that being said, as a player, though, you want to put your best foot forward, and you want to make sure that when that new person hits the ground running, you can go to him and say, you know what, this is my body of work. And last year was an absolute train wreck, but every single time I took the pitch, man, I gave it 100. I gave it 100%. And as the weeks progressed, I even got better to a point where I could be trusted to come in and do a job and potentially kick on in the starting 11. Again, how many players did that this year? How many players
we say
realistically did that this year?
Yeah, we say that, though. If we jump back to the period where we had all the injuries and the kids had to play, and a lot of people were sat there saying, yeah, it's the kids, we've got all these injuries, they're not doing a bad job, actually. But now, jump forward, all of a sudden, we're now saying, yeah, these squad players didn't do a good enough job.
Well, no. There's a difference. When Mikey Moore came in, he contributed a job. Yeah.
If
Will Langston did a job.
We took 7, 8 first-team players out. There is a big difference between, like I said earlier, playing 1 or 2 fringe players and expecting still to go on and win, to virtually playing a B team every single game and still expecting to win the likes of Man City, the likes of Liverpool, the likes of Arsenal, the likes of Villa, whatever. The problem is there are not many teams that have 5, 6 top players on the bench to come in and change the first team. And this is the problem for us. We've gone for a squad of young players, whether it's right or wrong, that are not ready yet this season. We're looking at next season. Now, them squad, if we kept the exact same team now as what we've got now, in 2 years' time, it would probably be a hell of a lot strong. I mean, forget age and aging and things like that, but it would be a lot stronger squad than what it is now. Now, how many people and fans come out and tell us this squad is better than what Conte had, this squad is better than what Jose had, this squad is better than what Pochettino had? So if the squad is better, why all of a sudden are all our fringe players not good enough if the squad is better?
Yeah,
Surely
no.
that's down to management and tactics.
No,
Potentially,
personally,
yeah.
I don't think the squad is as good as people say. And that was my next question. Look, 20 plus losses this season across all competitions. You know, you hear many pundits and fans say that this squad is far better than what their performances suggest, that another manager would get far better out of this squad. But, you know, that was my next question. Does this claim actually hold weight? Because when we've had to rely on the squad, and we've had to rely on the whole squad more than we've ever had to before, look at the shambles we're in. So is this squad actually as good as people make it out to be?
Well, I mean, I think the problem is with it that you have to look at the way we've played, the way other teams play against us, and the way management is. And how many times have we heard that? Oh, if Conte had this squad, we'd easily be top 4. How many times have we heard if Jose had this squad, we'd be top 4? If Poch had this, we'd be. Well, it's. I mean,
They all had Harry Kane.
Exactly. You know, they all had. I mean, they had a world class player. That, you know, I mean, Sonny probably was world class, and I've argued that he was. He isn't anymore. So, you know, other than maybe Romero, who has to be classed as world class because look at the trophies he's won and things like that. And I know I'll get slaughtered maybe for that, but you've got to. Now, other than that, we haven't got any real top players in our squad. There isn't one. So the argument comes in, well, we're a big 6 team, we should be finishing top 6. No, we're not a big 6, top 6. We're not a big team anymore. Well, if we're not a big team, we're about where we should be. If we are a top 6 team, then we're miles away from where we are. So make your mind up which one we are. Now, under a different manager, if we have the right manager, this squad could fly. If you don't have the right manager, this squad wouldn't fly. Now, what do we call flying? Do we want the football of winning maybe 1-0, but having one shot on target every game and winning? Or do we want a game where we don't know what's going to come up with? The problem is every fan is different to what we want. I would, for me personally, I want to see some attacking football where when we go 1-0 down, we still think we can come back and win. You look at under Conte, if we went 1-0 down in half the matches, he'd bring a defender on. So
he brought a defender on. He brought Sanchez on. We were chasing AC Milan to try and get through to the knockout
exactly
stages.
My point. But look, there are some managers out there that, for me, if they had this squad, they're not probably going to win the league maybe this season, but we would be a hell of a lot better. We might not be in a semi-final of a European Cup. We'd probably be better in the league. There are some managers that would be in a semi-final of the Cup, but maybe not as good in the league. So I think it's a question of be careful what you ask for, because we're going to get it next year. We're going to have a different manager. So we'll see how good this squad might be.
Well, so where do you stand personally on it then? And I want to go around the house on this one. You know, where do you stand on it personally? Do you believe the squad is as good as people say, or do you think, you know, the manager is the problem? He's just not maximizing it. Because I think Q7 put in a great point there, where I sort of feel the same. He says our squad isn't as good as we overrate our players heavily. I feel, however, our defense is not as bad as our record show, and I actually agree with that. I do think if a different manager had this defense like Pochettino, I do think it would be more cohesive. However, I'm just not sure the midfield and that forward line is really there in general. And I just don't think the strength in depth is there in general in this squad. So, I don't. It's a case where I think a manager might come in and defensively improve us a little, which might send us a little bit up the table. You're talking maybe 13th, 12th, 11th, but I definitely don't think this squad, as it stands, is capable of challenging, for European spots.
I think the squad is half decent. I think it's more a half decent in the sense of it's the potential that is in the squad going forward. At this particular moment, it's a decent squad. It's not a fantastic squad. It's not a terrible squad. But bring another manager in with a different style of system. Certain players will thrive and some players won't. You take Van der Ven. We all love Van der Ven. We think he's a fantastic defender. But you bring him back to defend on his penalty box and that, he's not a great defender. His legs are all over the place.
You're the second person to say that to me this week.
Well, I've said it before on the stream earlier on in the year that I think he's a fan. His strength is running back and defending. He's one of the best at doing that. There aren't many better. Bring him back. He's not. He would suffer under a certain manager playing a back line further back. Then you bring Maddison in. Would Maddison play better under a different manager? Probably. We might see the manager that we might see the Maddison that we saw in the first 10 games. Bissouma under a different manager, he could be a fantastic player again. These are the things that you look at and you think, well, different manager will get different things out of some of our players. Would the squad be better? Yes, under some managers. It could be worse under others. So, the problem is you've got to get the right manager in for the players that we've got. Yeah. If you get the right manager in, I think this squad could be very good. You get the wrong manager in, it could be an absolute disaster like it's looking now.
Fair. Stevie, I know you wanted to come in on this, and then we'll find out where Drew sits on this, because this is actually something that Drew brought up yesterday that I've sort of turned into a bit of discussion. So I want to find out where he sits, whether he believes the squad is good enough or it isn't. We'll go to you first, though, Steve.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I do agree with that notion that this back five is probably, like, when they're healthy and when they're on it, they're probably a top three back line in the Premier League. When you have that type of upper echelon anchoring your back, upper echelon talent anchoring your back line, a lot of good things can happen. If this was a team that was led by Jose Mourinho or Antonio Conte, it would be a bulletproof, rock solid, defensive team. The biggest problem where it comes into is whether or not this team is good enough under some of those managers, even Pochettino, really to kick into the top four. I don't think so. Our attacking line is one of the most dreadful that I've seen, and the proof is in the pudding in the counterattack. When this team does more ball watching than committing to getting forward, it opens the door to question whether or not this team has that type of talent to hang with some of the best in this league. And I go back to what I said earlier. At best, coming into the season, and again, there's multiple factors that go into answering this. A dreadful summer transfer window, especially when you consider Postecoglou's history of having large squad sizes, because when he does rotate, the guys he likes to bring in are a little bit more experienced and they're not 18, 19-year-old kids. And the fact that he didn't have that and he had to rely on it. The crazy thing about this is that, again, I just looked at this team and I thought, you know what? Could they repeat last year's fifth place finish? Yeah, potentially. But for the most part, I thought this team on paper looked like they were anywhere between 6th and 10th. Like they would have opportunities when maybe they would win 4 on the bounce. But when it came to beating a team, like Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City, I just didn't think that I just did not think that they had that type of upper echelon talent to be able to hang. Like maybe they were good enough to go deep into a cup. Yeah. I mean, that's how the squad was built, really. I mean, they were really good for one-offs, and I still think that on their best day, they can beat anybody on a one-off. But that being said, it's like over the course of the season, we're watching exactly the level of talent that this team possesses. And I hate to say it, I didn't think there were 20 losses bad. But that being said, it's like, when you strip everything back, I think they are probably where they deserve to be.
No, 100%. So you are. So just to round it up, you are of the opinion this squad isn't good enough. You know, it's not as good as people make it out to be.
Yeah. It was not built to win a Premier League.
Yeah. 100%. I definitely agree with you that. No,
right.
I don't
And
think
if
anyone
that's
can argue.
yeah, and if you're not building your squad to potentially put yourself in the top 4, and if you are a top 4 team, you have a 1-in-4 shot of winning this thing. If you're not building your team for that, then what are we doing here?
Yeah, and look, it's clear we didn't build it to go and compete on all 4 fronts with how young we went in the transfer market and stuff like that. Absolutely agree with that. I mean, Drew, look, you are the one that sort of sparked this whole discussion, so it's only fair that I bring it to you to end it, my man. I mean, where do you sit on the debate? Because you did sort of raise the question yesterday.
Do you know what? I just the more I think about it, the more scared I become, to be honest with you. And don't get me wrong,
Why?
a couple of players, you know, Harry Kane was papering over so many cracks. It's unreal.
Oh,
and I feel like this squad is arguably probably one of the most divisive. Is that the right word? I don't know. I think if I went man by man through this squad to the chat and asked them an opinion, I think you'd get different opinions on every player, barring 3 or 4. Do you know what I mean? Because I can say Vicario, and half of us will go, well, you know, he's a great shot stopper, blah, blah, and then you got half of us say, well, he's a bit flappy. You can go to Porro, half of us say, well, he's fantastic going forward, but he's a terrible defender.
Yeah.
People are split on Romero. I've got to be honest with you, I'm kind of split on VDV. I think he's a bit one-dimensional. I think sometimes he looks like a gazelle and he's fantastic. And I think other times he looks like a fucking daddy longlegs and he hasn't got a clue. I'm sorry, for a player who's 6'4", he can't command anything in the air.
People in the chat, let me know how you feel about Van de Ven. This is, you know, I'm hearing this opinion more and more. Like, I know Steve wants to come in and probably debate that, but we'll let you finish your point. But people in the chat, let me know how you're feeling about Van de Ven.
I'm giving Drew some stick.
I think Doggy. Yeah, go on.
But just to carry on that argument with that one, to throw another little pudding piece in. Under a different manager or under this manager, with the pace, if the line was brought back, do you think Van de Ven would be better as a left back running forward with the pace and the speed than actually as a centre back?
I think either a left back or a left-sided centre back in a 3, dare I say it. And I genuinely do. I think there is something about him when everything starts to tighten up and get closed around him. He looks like he's at 6s and 7s sometimes. And I don't mean like I think, you know, he's got all the potential in the world. He's learning, I guess, how to he's learning to run again properly, because I know he's had that all through his career and he's had to kind of learn how to use his body properly. There's something, I think we were all in awe, you know, as I say, speed merchant, fantastic. He's one of those ones, he's like Carl Walker. Do you know what I mean? He uses his pace to get out of some trouble sometimes that he ultimately can put himself. So Udogie, I mean, he's had an up and down season. I've heard times this season, you know, and bear in mind, he's just a kid. He had a horrible injury that he was coming back from. So he's no preseason. But I've heard so many opinions about Udogie this year. He's terrible, get rid. He's fantastic. He's got the potential. Do you know what I mean? Every way from Sunday, so many different opinions. So many different opinions on Bentancur, on Bissouma. I think we're all universally agreed that Bergval's fantastic. I mean, for the most part, I think Archie Gray's done really well, and we're all very appreciative of what he's done when he's come in. Everyone's on the fence on Sonny. Some people think he's an impact player. Some people think he's past it. Everyone hates Timo Werner. Everyone thinks some of the kids aren't good enough. Do you know what I mean? Johnson, even though he's our top scorer, people can't stand him. People don't think Solanke's good enough. People don't think Richarlison's good enough. Like, what? So no, I think the squad's actually fucking terrible, to be honest with you. And the problem is the backup, like to Steve's point earlier, I can't think of anyone other than a couple of kids. I mean, you've got to give Mikey more his due. Unfortunately, the kid picked up an injury a few months ago. Whether people want to listen, whether people want to hear this or not, he got a knock. He also got a virus. He hasn't been well. So he's been part of squads, but he hasn't played barring one game. He hasn't played any football since like October. So you got to cut that kid some slack. He's 17. And if we're putting the weight of a club on a 17-year-old shoulder to think that he can get us out of trouble, then we've got even bigger problems than I think we've got. But, you know, like a couple of the kids have come in. Ajay's been fantastic, you know, when he came in, scored that goal. But you can't rely on these kids to drag us out of this crap. And as I say, to Steve's point, nobody has really come in off of that bench and said, look at me, I'm here, why are you playing him? Barring maybe Jed Spence, probably Jed Spence. But yeah, so other than that, I'm sorry to be a bit of a killjoy, and I apologize to the chat, but yeah, I think honestly, and I think the proof is in the pudding. Where are we in the league?
Yeah.
And do you know what I take? Because I think Stevie Fraser mentioned this earlier on, you know, and a couple of other people, the injuries, and I genuinely take the injuries on board. But I'm specifically talking about the last 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks, you know, 12 weeks, 14 weeks, when we've had players back. And I really thought that we could actually push on and actually start putting on some performances. But my problem is with this whole heavy rotation bollocks is that when do you actually get a chance to build any sort of momentum and cohesion?
Correct.
Because you've got a first team, like, surely it's incumbent, and this isn't just Pochettino, this isn't just Postecoglou, this is Jose Mourinho, this is Conte as well, and maybe this goes to your point, Dave, that, you know, they've been let down by the squad that they've got, but it is incumbent on these managers to drop in these players in fits and starts, bits and pieces. You don't change 9 players. I don't remember Ferguson ever doing that. And I'm sorry to harp on about the old days. You know, I don't want to pull a Dermot. But like one of the greatest things that the great managers do is they have a nucleus of their 12 to 13 that they know that they can rely on. And you put out in those cup games, you look at the opponent and you go, how many can I genuinely afford to replace? Let me put my six hitters out there and let me get 4 or 5 of the kids. And then when we get 2-3-0 up, when this gets comfortable and my 2 midfield generals are just controlling this game, then I'll take out another one and I'll drop in a kid for the last 10, 15 minutes. And that's how you not only get a cohesive unit, you also give these kids minutes. So then when you do get into a situation where you are missing 4 or 5 players, you can afford to drop in 2 or 3 and they've had a bit more experience. You've basically got 11 bench warmers, and every now and again you're taking 9 of them and you're going, there you go, guys, try and make something work. At least that's how it feels.
Should that be an issue, though, considering they are training with each other every day? You know, they're part of these drills every day. And in the build-up to the game that he's making changes, you know, they will play as an 11 together for 2 or 3 days in the build-up to that game.
That, well, I mean, and that maybe that goes to them just not being good enough, Dave. Maybe that goes to just not having enough quality, and some of them just can't cut it, and we're just doing the best we can with what we've got. Do you know what I mean? Because I can't. That's one of the things where I always in my head when I have these sort of conversations with myself. Don't mean to sound crazy, but when I kind of go through these discussions with myself to try and come up with arguments, it's like, well, surely they have, right? Surely they've been training a week and they're doing the same training. Is their training not as good? Like if you got a first 11 versus a second 11, and the first 11 are just creaming them every week, so they're not actually learning. They're just getting hammered by the best ones, you know, the best team we've got. Like I don't know the ins and outs of a training, but you would think that they should all be of a certain level and be able to work in the same shapes, right?
Because when you think about it as well, even when these fringe players aren't playing together, they will usually mimic the opposition 11. So they're still effectively playing together as an 11, you know, against the first 11 that are playing. Right. So they are, you know, working on shape and all of that stuff together. Look, I can understand for the first 10, 15 minutes, you know, trying to what's the right word? The fluidity of the play, getting used to the runs that this player's going to make. I can understand that. But then an intelligent player after that clocks it and goes, right, this is what I need to do. It feels like a lot of our players don't sort of have that level of football intelligence. Like I can even take it for a half of a game where things maybe look a little bit messy or a little bit out of shape. But after that, at some point, they should be able to get it going and, play a bit of football. How many times as a kid did you just drop in down to the, play people that were playing in a park and stuff and still drop in, and you can still replicate some resemblance of a team and stuff like that. For me, I just think we give them too much of a pass in that regard. I do think, like I said, I can take it for a certain point in the game, but at some point then, smart footballers head switch on and be like, right, this is what we need to do. People start discussing with people, and then you form yourself as a cohesive unit.
Right.
Anybody?
Yeah,
that's the problem. I mean, I think touching on some Drew just said there as well, that I think part of the problem with the sort of backroom staff and everything is everything's brand new. When Ange came in, he doesn't bring a backroom staff with him who know his system and how he works.
But Conte wasn't even allowed to bring one with him. Slot didn't take Tottenham because he wasn't allowed to bring his staff with him.
Correct.
Well, I think the thing is, I mean, we've had this argument quite a few times because when Conte turned us down, the arguments were that he couldn't. Well, no, it was because Conte had a massive backroom staff and he wasn't allowed to bring them all. But you every time you see a manager go, he'll take backroom staff. Now, if he's got to start with a new set of staff and then get them to work the way, how do we expect all this to gel with, if you've got someone taking, say, first 11 and someone else taking the B squad or whatever, but this is how I want to play, it kind of doesn't work. And this is where I think we have seen the problems with training, that something's not right in the whole system. I mean, we can blame Ange. Well, yeah, Ange has already admitted he doesn't take the training. He tells his trainers how he wants them to do it. So is it their fault or is it Ange's fault? Well, it still comes back to the argument. Well, if you change 7 or 8 outfield players all in one go, it is not going to look as good as having the first 11 players in there. So
100%.
it
Shouldn't
doesn't
look as
matter
bad,
how the training has gone. It matters on the ability. Now, if they were as good as the first 11, they would be the first 11. So we know there's a drop off. Well, if you've got a first 11 that isn't a top 4 team, your second 11 certainly aren't a top 4 team. So, I don't understand the argument of when we've had to bring 7, 8 new players in, we still expect to be a top 4 team or whatever. It just doesn't make sense.
I'm not expecting to be a top 4 team, but I'm not expecting to look like a relegation team either. When you bring in these players, I do think there's sort of a medium to be had. I think they should still be somewhat competitive, but we're not competitive when we rely on a lot of the squad players.
Yeah. But I think there's a big difference as well when we're talking about bringing fringe players in, to those fringe players being seasonal professionals against kids, basically. I mean, if you look at our second string squad, it is a very young second, a lot of them are in first, second, maybe, first or second season in the Premiership. It's not like bringing on a Davis, a Richarlison, these type of squad players. We're talking Archie Gray, we're talking, in theory, Bergvall, we're talking Odebear. These are young kids that haven't really had much Premiership experience. So there is a massive drop-off to the second-rate squad for Tottenham at the moment. Next season, that bench players are going to be a hell of a lot more further forward in their careers. They are going to be more experienced in the Premiership. In theory, we shouldn't see the same sort of drop-off as what we're seeing this season.
No, hopefully not. I think where my problem, a lot of it comes in, and especially in years gone by, is like, you bring in the likes of your Davies and people like that, and I think it sets a bad precedent to other players that are in his sort of, when he selected the squad that he selected it, because he is genuinely okay with just being that sort of fringe player. And I think that's something we have to change at Tottenham Hotspur, that you got to come in here with the mentality is, you're not here to be happy to be a fringe player. You're here to try and chase down first team opportunities. You know, that's what the message should be sent out. And I think just offering someone like Davies a new contract and going, yeah, it's grand, you just be another squad player next year, I think sends out a piss poor message to everybody else. You know, players like that, players like Basuma, who for large parts of this season, large parts of his Tottenham career has been absolutely piss poor. Get them out of the fucking football club. Get fresh guys in. You know, I think that's a part of the problem. You allow these guys to sit around for so long with mediocre performances. It sends out the message and the precedent to everyone else. You don't really have to perform when you come in. You're still going to see out your 4-5 year contract and still get your massive wages. I think it sends out a poor precedent. But I do want to touch on something that Drew said, and maybe a bit about the youngsters. I just want to take this from Faz Radfar. He says, if Son is not involved today, should he start Thursday? Look, if Son doesn't start today or play many minutes, I wouldn't start him Thursday, to be quite frank. I think Thursday you need players that are willing to try and get on the press and, you know, not give the opposition time on the ball and stuff like that. I think that's where Son just doesn't have it in his legs to do that, you know, as much as we need it in an away game. And look, we beat Frankfurt without Son. You know, I think we beat, what was it, Man United earlier on in the season, convincingly without Son away from home and stuff. I think there's an argument to say, especially if Son's not fit, that maybe you put him on the bench. If things are going a little bit dicey, then maybe you bring him on. But for me, I wouldn't start him, Faz. No, I think, you know, I'd argue, I think Richarlison deserves another start out in Bodo Glimt. I know the end product maybe wasn't there, but he caused them a nuisance. When he came off, we didn't really produce much down the left-hand side for the rest of the game. So for me, I'd argue, I think, and especially since Richarlison is scoring goals and setting up goals, I think he has to play Faz Radfar. Let me know what you think on that. But just quickly as well, Joe, I think you touched on something, and I think this is also where Postecoglou maybe needs to reassess what he's doing at Tottenham if he's kept in the job going forward, if he's lucky enough not to be sacked, is he doesn't have coaching staff he can rely on to teach his methods that he knows. I know they're drilling this into the players. So basically, he's relying on a lot of staff that Tottenham have already had around and stuff like that. And by him not being down there, by him not being on top of them, you know, so involved in training, maybe that's got to do a large reason why they can't play handball. Maybe the coaches don't exactly know what message and what they're trying to get across 100%. You know, whereas if he had staff he trusted, then he could have done that. He can go, I know these guys will implement it. I can do my job here or whatever. I think maybe he does need to maybe be a little bit more hands-on on the training pitch, at least until they get it, especially when you look at the squad. It's quite young in general. That's why you need your manager on the training pitch. You need him there working day in, day out with them, giving them messages, bits of golden nuggets, you know, information, stuff like that. I think potentially that's where he's gone a little bit wrong. But I do want to just quickly, you know, some of the senior players, like you said, the likes of, you know, your Davies and your Basumas and players like that, you know, when we have had to rely on them, they have let us down. But, you know, when some of these youngsters have had a chance, they've took the opportunity. Mikey Moores, your Scarlets, your Joys, you know, they've taken the limited minutes available to them and actually made an impact with them sort of minutes. So why is Ange still clinging to the experience that's clearly not performing? Because, you know, you look at Pochettino, I think he was brave enough to, you know, rip up the sort of script with a lot of the senior players at the time. You know, he brought through the likes of he put a lot more faith in Kane, even though he had the likes of Adebayor and all there to pick from. Brought Mason, your Bentalebs in and stuff like that. Has Postecoglou been too scared to sort of make that sort of move at Tottenham, which I actually think he would have benefited from a long time ago if he actually had the balls to do it? Because some of the players out there, some of the performances weren't good enough. Some of the players were just absolutely pushed to their limit that they couldn't run. So it was hampering our performances. Why didn't Postecoglou be brave enough to start going, okay, more on you go, okay, Scarlett, on you go, especially Ajayi as well. Players that when he did put them on, they fucking took their opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I could think is that he was already, you know, I mean, his job at that point, there was already murmurings that it was kind of on the line. And by the way, I think I've lost all credibility with my VDV take, so it doesn't really matter what I say. Big up, chat.
But you know what, though, Drew? You, Soren, I think Jack sort of tell it to me to a degree. And there's a few people in the chat that agree with you as well. I think it's not as unpopular as you think it is.
Yeah. No, I just, I think there's something to be said. Like, I get wanting to see these kids flourish, and I get it. But for me personally, there is something to having too many. Like you've already got. I mean, I can't recall every squad that's played every game this season, but we already had the live of Archie Gray holding down the fort as an 18-year-old at the back. You've had Bergvall playing probably more minutes than he already played, and I just think there's an argument that could he have thrown on these kids? Would they have given him more? Probably. Was he maybe under so much pressure at the time that he's just thinking to himself, I've got to play tried and tested. Like I've got to play, at some point, he's got to have them play themselves into some sort of form, because at some point he's got to rely on these guys. Like you can't constantly rely on the kids all the way throughout the season. So while I agree that he should have, I can understand the reluctance not to. And also it kind of harps back to my, as a club, we shouldn't have to be relying. I know we're in this situation, sound like a broken record, but we shouldn't have to put the weight of this club on 17-year-old shoulders.
No, 100%. I fully agree with you on that. But where I stand on it is, right, I like Odobert. Tell is sort of winning me round, right? But we still sit here and we go, they're young, that's why we sort of excuse the lack of end product to a certain degree. Joy had a couple of minutes. He demonstrated end product. Mikey Moore, when he's played, he's shown end product. He scored goals and he set up goals. He remember he came off the bench against Everton. We were lackluster going forward. He got one ball, put it in the box. Richarlison bangs it in. And this is my point. He keeps persisting with players that maybe for long periods weren't really showing much end product, especially going forward. It was quite dull for a long time. Why not then, for instance, bring Mikey Moore on with 30 minutes to go, and if he makes an impact, then you can start trusting him a bit more. I just think he's been very hesitant, because I know that Mikey Moore has been injured and there's stuff going on, but even before that, he was sort of sidelined. I remember Werner came back and he was out of the squad altogether for a period of time. But my point is, why are you ignoring that they are demonstrating end product? It's like if things are so bad and they are demonstrating end product, surely then you've got to be brave enough to go with it. Like ideally, I get what you're saying, that you don't want to be putting the clubs on their shoulders, but Pochettino did. And look at the rewards it gave him. It gave him time with the fan base, gave him time. The media also gave him time because of the articles they were printed about how young Tottenham is and, how brave he was to go turn to the academy and stuff like that. And, I think it bought him a lot of time. He bought him the time to build what he built, because before that, when he was relying on senior pros on big money, they were letting him down and almost cost him his job. And when he made that brave decision, he never looked back from it. There's a lot to be said for us.
Unfortunately, I just think night and day difference in coaching and how they coach between Postecoglou and Pochettino. Like night and day. I don't think there's any probably more contrasting difference between how they.
Could it be the fact that he's not on the training pitch like Pochettino would have been back then, and that's why he's not seeing it? Maybe.
I mean, I feel like you kind of hit on something, because and this is, I don't pretend to know too much about the ins and outs of the daily coaching routine at Tottenham Hotspur. So this is just what I've heard, and just some, I don't know if it's half truths, rumors, or what. But from my understanding, he's got like his attacking coaches, his midfield coaches, his defending coaches. They all go off and do their thing, work on their patterns, and then I don't quite understand how you then take all those three. And then at some point, those three then go to another coach and all get joined together cohesively. It almost seems like the more you sort of talk it out loud and the more you look at it on the field, it does seem like we've looked so disjointed sometimes that it almost looks 100%. Like three different coaching styles.
I think the way it works at Tottenham is just quickly. I think the way it works at Tottenham is that they all come in, they have their meetings, and whatever else. And Postecoglou will set out what he wants to try and get into the squad. Then the coaches will go off and implement that while he sort of does other things and stuff like that, or maybe overviews it from a step back. But he's not actually physically on the pitch, but he's not the first man to do this. There's sort of two styles of coaching. There's one where they're on the pitch and they want to drill every message home, and then there's one where they stand off and they trust their staff. But how can Postecoglou trust the staff when they're not his staff to a large degree?
And also, and I've questioned. Even if you don't question the manager, I've questioned the coaches and the coaching staff. Like I don't know who these people are. And all right, and I don't want to be a hypocrite because I've also turned around and said, you know, there's not many people probably in the chat respectfully, and there's probably not many people on this panel that can tell me who the first team coach or the assistant coaches of Manchester City or Arsenal even. Do you know? I can't believe I said it.
Well, they when teams celebrate now, they tend to go to these coaches now, don't they?
Well,
Oh, you're a genius.
But he seems to have, he didn't really bring, my understanding, didn't really bring anybody with him. The last two coaches that we did hire were coaches from Scotland that have been with Hibs and St Mirren.
Yeah.
I also feel like our drop-off somewhat maybe coincided with Chris Davies going to Birmingham, and look what happened. Look what's happened there. Because I think he's probably he seems like half a decent coach. So I don't know. And again, I take all these the injuries into account. They've not been able to do much on the training pitch, but what they have done on the training pitch still doesn't appear to have been much. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's you're seeing it reflected on the football pitch, aren't you? They usually say, a well-drilled team, you sort of see the reflection on the football pitch. So maybe there is something to, the way he's handling it. I also agree with you, the quality of coaches that we have there, to a certain degree. I agree with you on that. Steve, do you want to jump in on any of that?
In some respect, you can say that he's played the kids because Matisse Stell is 19, Odebear is 19, Bergvall is 19, Archie Gray is 18, and it's like by hook or by crook they were forced to play. And I think that maybe Postecoglou puts those guys in a different category because of their first team experience in with their former clubs and having that run out prior. So maybe they're put in a different pot. But guys like Will Lancashire, Mikey Moore, Alfie Dorrington, that's the thing. It's I think there are discrepancies to it to a point where he's regardless of whether we like it or not, he's going to play people that he feels he can win a game of football, right? And I also do agree with Drew that if things were different and we didn't have necessarily an injury crisis and Ange Postecoglou was not put under pressure, and having all these rumors about being sacked. I think it's played a little bit different, and I think some of these guys probably would have gotten a little bit more run out. But now that he's in a position where he's fighting for his job, he is going to rely on names that he feels that he can trust more so that he can explain his starting 11s in job interviews this summer.
That's not half the problem, because look, it wasn't just that. Jose didn't turn to some of the youngsters when some of the squad players were showing them the same things. Neither did Conte. And I do think it comes down to actually having the balls and going, look, I don't care what name you have, how much money you're on. If you're not going to do what I'm asking you to do, off you go. I will bring in someone that will. And I almost think, fortune favors the brave to a large degree. You look at Sir Alex Ferguson at Man United. He turned around to the class of 92 or 91, whatever you call them. They won the FAU Cup. Very prestigious at the time. A very hard trophy to win. If you won it, usually, a couple of them players would go into the first team. He took a load of them up, and he never looked back. And I almost think, at some point, you've got to recognize, okay, he's a name. Yes, he's on these wages, but I'm sorry. He's to the detriment of what I'm trying to do. And sometimes playing a youngster that has that enthusiasm, okay, he has to have the quality as well. But also that enthusiasm, that sometimes can give you a lot more than a player that just couldn't be arsed.
And I thought we were actually going to see it by this point in the season, considering that we are essentially putting all our eggs in that Europa League basket. So if that's the case, and you can't necessarily rely on some of these guys outside of the Europa League, I thought we were going to see a lot more of Mikey Moore. I thought we were going to see a lot more of some of these younger players because, to your point, you're going to see the youthful enthusiasm. And it still kind of boggles my mind why we're not necessarily kicking that can down that road, considering we only have 3 more matches left in the league. We're not going to be relegated. There's no excuse why not to play them at this stage of the season. But that being said, I also question whether or not Ange Postecoglou has the courage. You know what I mean? Like it takes a.
Well, it's not even that, right? But has Postecoglou ever? Sorry, go on. Has Postecoglou ever shown any history in any other club of nurturing young talent?
No, because he's had an average age of 27, 28 on his squad with huge squad numbers. It's not to say that he didn't have young players or didn't, but that being said, when he plays them, it's usually when his team is up by 3 goals, 2 or 3 goals, and he can actually bring on a young winger with 25 minutes left in the game to give them run out with some experience where there's no pressure on their shoulders. This
is more about club. This is more about club alignment from top to bottom than it does about anything else. Anything else.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. All the young talent that we have coming through, they've won trophies at 3 different age groups. We've signed a lot of young talent, and you've got a manager that doesn't really have a history of sitting there, and developing these young talents. Yeah, people can go, well, look, he managed for the Australian under-21s or whatever it was. Yeah, but he's only got that pool to pick with. He doesn't have more experienced players that you can turn to and stuff.
Right.
It's a lot of a different job, It's different when you've got the options and then you choose not to do it. So for me, look, I do think that's where ultimately Postecoglou has actually let himself down at Tottenham Hotspur. I feel like he could have been braver sometimes, that when, like, for instance, some of the Europa League games, right? He put out some of the squad players, didn't really get much, brought on some of these youngsters, Scarlett, Sajai's, Moores, and all of a sudden, we're looking good going forward. And I think that's where he's got to look at it and go, okay, I'll play you the next game. Because it does one of two things which benefit you as a manager. One, the player that is being taken off becomes embarrassed, works harder, becomes a better player. Or two, he goes moaning and crying. And if he does that, then he's not for you anyway. So for me, I actually think it sort of weeds out the chaff of the squad to a large degree. And that's where I think the manager at some point has to be a little bit braver. That's where I was also disappointed with Conte and Jose. I know they don't have a history of turning to the academy, but what's the point of keep playing at the time like your Sanchez and shit like that when they're just not doing it for you? At some point, you've got to go, do you know what? Kid, come here. You're starting this week. I'm going to see what you can do. And I think that's where, managers at Tottenham need to be braver. But I also wonder, I go back to and I harp on to Tim Sherwood. If he didn't stick his neck on the line for Harry Kane would have been sold to Leicester. The pressure that Daniel Levy really put him under at the time and stuff like that. I wonder, does that still continue to this day? Because no matter how many players we bring through, they're still not getting their opportunities. We'd still rather go out and spend your 30, 40 millions. And that's what's pissed me off over the last couple of windows. We had so much talent coming through in different positions. Why are we still going out spending 30, 40 million on teenagers when we've got some of the most talented teenagers, across the UK? It absolutely blows my mind.
What's crazy though? What's crazy, Dave, is if I go back to that Galatasaray game, and I believe Will Ankshire actually got a start in that match. That young kid was absolutely not fazed with the environment of Istanbul, and he actually put in a very good shift. I think he even banged in a goal, and he got sent off. But sent off or not, those were to your point, those were the type of performances with our actually homegrowns that actually leads you to believe that they're actually capable of continuing to get a run out. But after Lakeshire gets set off against Galatasaray, he was essentially dropped from Ange's matchday squad. It was almost like this was like a seminal moment or a sliding doors moment for Will Ankshire instead of recognizing a performance for what it was. That was actually a gritty performance by him.
Yeah. And look, don't get me wrong. I think he got sent off that evening, didn't he? And to a degree, you can argue maybe that didn't help the situation. I can understand maybe, getting the point across to you. Like, you can't become frustrated like that and taking a red card. But you've got to play him in games like Tamworth and stuff like that, just to alleviate the likes of your Dom Solankis and your Madisons and your Johnsons, players that Ange Postecoglou does seem to rely on. Just give me 2 seconds, Shawnee. I'll send you over that link now. Shawnee, we will only be going for
I just sent it to X, Shawnee.
I will say we are only going to go for about another 20 or so minutes, though, Shawnee. So just bear that in mind. But I do want to take a brief moment to pause, as they say nowadays, all the young kids, to take our time out to plug the wonderful sponsorship of NordVPN. So, guys, basically, NordVPN are giving an exclusive deal. If you head over to nordvpn.com, type in the code FLATCAP. There is a 2-year plan there that you get a discount off, and you can try it risk-free now for 30 days with a money-back guarantee if you are not satisfied. But basically what a NordVPN does, it allows you to change your location in order to try and, shop around, get better deals for yourself in terms of your TV packages, your holiday packages and stuff like that. But also, if you are traveling, which a lot of us are doing now with the Europa League campaign, it's good to have one in your back pocket because it does allow you to change back to your current, the location you are traveling from to be able to watch your subscriptions and stuff like that. But not only that, you know, with the way the modern day world is going, with all this technology and all the scams and everything else, and how easy it is for all these smart people on computers now to get access to your details, they also, you know, provide a level of security as well, where they do protect your bank details and all of your details when you are shopping. And not only that, they protect all of your details while you're on public Wi-Fi's as well, which is one of the easiest way for people to be able to get in and get your details. So there's many good benefits. And not only that, this day and age, you know, most VPNs, it's one price for one VPN. Well, you can use this NordVPN and put it onto 10 devices. Also, it helps with if you are watching streams and stuff like that, sometimes you get lagging and stuff. Well, with NordVPN, they sort of stabilize that, the bandwidth throttle, which actually means there's very little, if not no, lagging whatsoever. So there's plenty of benefits of you having a NordVPN. I can't express that enough. So make sure you do get over to NordVPN if you are interested, and try it with a 30-day money back guarantee. Make sure you use the code FLATCAP. If you don't want the 2-year plan, there's other shorter plans there that you can avail of, but I do recommend for everyone to get one. So big up NordVPN sponsoring us on our journey to Bilbao. Thank you very, very much. But look, we'll keep it moving. I do believe we've got the one and only Sean Butler in the house. Let's bring him in just quickly. Darren, yes, I'm planning on it. That's for sure. I just need someone to come along on the journey with me. But I actually like the boat, to be honest. I can't wait to do it that way, to be quite frank. But good to see you, and Spurs Logic as well. Good to see you. Shawnee, I don't know how much maybe you were listening to or whatever. Is there anything you want to come in on?
Well, I just wanted to come in on the show, mate. Say hello. Nice to meet Steve.
Pleasure to meet you there,
Drew and
Shani.
Soren as always. And Dave, you know, you love your champion. Big up the NordVPN and big up the boat to Bilbao. How much alliteration can you possibly throw out in 5 words on the bounce? And I've just...
I think you've upset Soren. Maybe his dog
Sorry, Soren.
so he's just paused, you know, took him out of the stream or whatever. Shawnee, we were talking though, just briefly before, you know, about and maybe not being a bit braver with some of the youngsters that have maybe shown he could have given them more opportunities, the likes of your Scarlett, your Joys. I know there's something going on with Mikey Moore right now, but before that, you know, again, he was sort of ousted from the team for a little while and stuff like that. Do you think Postecoglou could have been a bit braver with some of these guys? Especially, like, you look at the likes of Matisse Tal, yeah, he's exciting, but there's not a lot of end product there. I'd argue Mikey Moore has probably demonstrated more end product in the less time that he's had.
Yeah, I disagree with that, right? Okay. I think that, just personally, I think that if you're good enough, you're old enough, or if you're good enough, you're old enough, and if you're in the squad, then you have to be compared to the value that you're going to provide versus everybody else in the squad, no matter of age, right? So if Mikey Moore's good enough, just because he's 17, great, brilliant future ahead of him, superb, not undermining any of that stuff. But if you're good enough to be in the squad at 17, then you have to be compared to output relative to your peers, including Sonny, including Tell, including Odebear, including everybody else, right? And I personally haven't seen anything like enough from Mikey Moore. What we have seen of him, I think he's had moments of good. I think he's had moments of average. I think he's had moments of bad, as to have everybody else in the team. So, as I say, I just think that, like, you can make the argument that, you know, as a Tottenham fan, we want to give this guy a chance because, you know, next year he's going to benefit from it the year after, etc. But Ange Postecoglou is hanging on to his job by a very thin ice, or a very thin thread. And so does he really care about whether or not Mikey Moore is going to be ready in 2027 for Tottenham? I'd argue no. And I think that I can understand that logically, why he doesn't really care about that. So he's basing his decisions on merit. Now, merit...
Sean, Pochettino's job was hanging in the balance. He turned to the academy, you know, never looked back. But, you know, Alex Ferguson at United, his job was hanging in the balance, you know, turned to the class of 91 and stuff like that. You know, there is merit to say that, you know, sometimes you turn to these guys, they can help improve your fortunes. And I think that's where it comes down to the braveness of a manager. Are you willing to accept players that continuously, you know, let you down on the football pitch, or are you going to do something about it?
Yeah, I don't disagree. And that comes down to the man, right? I'm just saying, I can understand the logic of saying, like, I haven't seen enough from Mikey Moore, and therefore, you know, I'm going to go with my trusted players that I know have been there and done it, rather than roll the dice at such crucial moments. But then at the same time, you look at, like, what happened on Thursday night, and you do see some experimentation in the crucial moments of the game, of the season, bringing back in Richarlison to play on the left wing. I thought it somewhat worked, especially for the first goal. But it was wild to see that sort of thing happening at such crucial times. So Ange definitely has experimentation within him. He just clearly isn't a guy who really leans into youth as much as other managers do. And that's why, like I've been saying for a long time, that as much as I, again, could be on board the notion of him, if he wins the Europa League, then on a merit basis, he could arguably justifiably keep his role because he's the best manager in 45 years or whatever. But at the same time, I think that this particular crop of squad that we have has so much youth coming through that you have to have a manager that is willing to do both, right? One is experiment, and two is to give the kids a go. And like you say correctly, what Alex Ferguson did, Pochettino did, Xavi did with Yamal. Yeah, there's a never-ending list of managers that are willing to dip their toe. Jurgen Klopp did it loads of times as well. I just don't think Ange is the sort of guy that particularly wants to go in that direction. I think he prefers to experiment with tried and trusted than untried and not yet trustable.
No, look, that's absolutely fair enough. Q7 says he's referring to his output in much less minutes as a goal and 2 assists, if not mistaken, would be another if Son never missed that City versus Villa. And also, let's not forget some of the misses that Werner had off the back of some of Mikey Moore's brilliant plays and stuff like that in the Europa League. He could have had a lot more if Werner knew how to finish. Look, it's just my observation. I do think that I just feel that Mikey Moore has provided more end product off the wing than maybe what Matisse Tal has so far this season. And someone says, are you saying he's more developed than Matisse Tal? Look, I'd make the argument. I don't think he's far off it, to be honest with you. I think he shows a lot more in possession than what maybe Matisse Tal does. That's just my opinion, though. That's just how I see it. I know it's going to be very, very unpopular. But, guys, the lineup is out, so I'm just going to read that out to everybody here. Vicario retains his place in goal. Archie Gray will come in at right back. Danzon Davies in at centre back. Spence in at left back. Sarr, Basuma and Kulusevski through the middle. Udebert off the right. Tell off the left. With Richarlison through the middle. My boy Rich continuing his redemption arc. Another assist there against Bodo Glimt. On the bench is Kinski, Pedro Porro, Destiny Adogi, Romero, Van de Ven, Bentancur, Ajayi, Mikey Moore, and Johnson. So speak of Ajayi, and the devil will appear. So hopefully the two of them, Mikey Moore and Ajayi, it'd be nice to see them get some minutes at some point today. And let's see what they can do. Guys, I mean, look, let's talk about Jed Spence just quickly as well, because I want to ask maybe, what are we not seeing when it comes to Jed Spence? Because he came in, he done well, he was at the peak of his powers to a certain degree, but since then, since Adogi and has come back and he's fully fit, he's been relegated to being Ange's number 2 again. But also, he was overlooked by Thomas Tuchel. That's 2 managers that have overlooked him, despite how us fans feel he's played. What are we missing when it comes to Jed Spence? Why is a manager very hesitant to put their full faith and full trust in the guy? Is it the narrative that comes before him, over the previous years, or what have you? Again, we'll start with you, Shawnee, and work our way up the panel.
I'll be really quick on this one, mate. Yeah, I think that with Jed Spence, I don't know about the Thomas Tuchel thing. I don't know. I don't really watch international football, so I'm not really that into what happens there. As far as Ange goes, Again, this is not a criticism of Ange, it's an observation. I do think there's a little bit of of other gamesmanship going on here. I didn't like what he did with Archie Gray, throwing him in the 6th into the Lions' den at Anfield last week. It was almost one of those, people are criticising him for not having used Archie Gray in the 6th. Okay, then let's throw you in. Throw you in at the deep end is the nicest way that you can spin that. I think you're throwing him into the Wolves. I do a little bit, mate. I do, yeah. I think it was
after. I was quite surprised by your take. Don't get me wrong. I know you look at things, differently. And in fairness, I know you look at things in multiple different ways and sort of make up your opinion. But you were sort of saying that he sort of, to a degree, maybe threw Archie Gray under the bus to hit back at critics and go, "Why are you not giving Archie Gray a run in the number 6?" Whereas I think I'm of the opinion, I think it needed to happen to see whether we needed to invest in that position heading into the summer. Is Archie Gray and Bentancur good enough for next season, or do we need to go again?
You can't judge Archie Gray in the 6th and the first real opportunity, 90 minutes in the 6th against the best team in European football.
No, obviously he has to
with a 10 in Madison that didn't get back. I felt like it was a brutal experiment, and just not to get, because we're talking about Jed Spence. I think it's a little bit of the same thing. I think there's been a lot of I think Jed Spence was one of the ones where he proved him wrong. I mentioned before about why aren't we experimenting? Okay, here's your back 3 against Everton. See, it didn't work. Now let me get on with my football. Sure. And then you only find out after the fact that he says, when he's defending himself about accusations of injuries not being his fault because we don't train anymore. And you go, well, if that's the case, then why were you experimenting with a back three when we haven't had any time to train for it? So it's a bit of double talk. And with Jed Spence, I think that was there was a lot of people saying, why isn't Jed Spence getting a game? Why isn't he playing in the Europa League squad? He finally gets his chance because of injuries, and Jed Spence proved him wrong. And I think, and then Ange tried to spin that story into some nonsense narrative, like it was all part of his grandmaster plan to give Jed like a hard introduction, and like, I'm testing him. Like, what are we doing here? You just got it wrong. You didn't see the value in the player, and I think there's a little bit of that side to Ange. And I hate saying it because I don't know his character, but I'm just hypothetically kind of
sight to every manager, though, isn't there, to a certain degree?
Is there a flip side? Is there a flip side last week that we see Basuma and everyone goes, "Why is he playing this clown? Why didn't you just give Archie Gray a go?"
Yeah, no, and you know what? Someone mentioned that on my on the show when I called out Ange. They said if Sarr wasn't playing in that game, if Gray wasn't playing in that game and Basuma started, people will be going, right, "Why are you not giving Gray a go?" So I do hear that, I definitely do, and it's a fair point. And like I say, they're just opinions. I just think that Ange has got a little bit of his personality that is so egotistically driven that he'll find any reason to be right, and he'll spin narratives like Shane Warne to try to like find a way to not be wrong about these things. And I think with the Jed Spence thing, he couldn't wait for Udogie to come back because that was his number one guy. And to be fair to Udogie, since he's come back, he's been really good as well. So like I don't really have a problem with it. But just if you want to, like you asked, why do you think Jed Spence was thrown to the thrown back into the realms of the B team? I think it certainly wasn't because he deserved to be. It was. I think it's because Ange has his favourite of those two.
Fair. I also want to throw out there, guys, as well. Just quickly, because I know I'm under time constraints, got to go and get ready for the watch along and all. But before we get everyone's individual thoughts on the team and what to expect today, I want to sort of throw out there a question that the leak, the mole, again, another injury was leaked before the Europa League. Again, it brings around that conversation. It was Ola Burr last month. Now it's Lucas Bergvall. And Ange Postecoglou in the press conference sort of said Bergvall was having a hard time dealing with the injury, knowing that he's out for the rest of the season. Gutted that he'll probably, if we do make the final, he probably won't end up making that to a certain degree in that as well. And that the club wanted to withhold that for a few days to give Bergvall time to deal with it. And Postecoglou was upset in terms of for Bergvall. But again, it brings around the conversation. The fact that it keeps happening, I must ask, is this just a consequence of modern day football and the size of the clubs that there's so many people working there on a day-to-day basis that stuff is going to get out? Or is there someone purposely behind the scenes trying to sabotage Ange to a degree so they can have their opportunity? Because like you said, we've got in the manager from one or two guys came in, they've both managed elsewhere as first team managers. You've got Ryan Mason sitting there as well. So I just want to throw that out there where people maybe sit on that, because once I can understand, twice it does seem like someone is purposely trying to sabotage, because at the end of the day, right, it shows a lack of discipline within the club, shows a lack of respect towards the club, and that to a large degree. And look, we'll start with the top of the panel. We'll go to Soren and Steve as well, and we'll go to Drew, because I know Soren feels passionately about this, so I need to give him a few minutes.
What'd you say, brother?
Well, I think it's a funny one, this, because I don't think it's somebody like Mason or anything that's going to necessarily benefit from.
So you don't think it's someone looking for an opportunity, No,
I just think it's somebody who's either taking a little bit of backhanded money, or just likes to gossip, or just can't keep the mouth shut, whichever way you want to say it. But it kind of happens in most clubs. For me, it's a shame, because do we believe Ange that he wanted to keep it quiet? I don't know. It sounds a sensible answer.
Should the club not have a handle of putting out updates, though? Should that not be like they should have?
Yeah, it probably should be up to the club to do it. But when you do have somebody giving out this information, then it to me, it's a lack of class. If you're the one that keeps going out there and telling people what's going on within the club when the club are obviously trying to keep it quiet, then to me, you're not the right person that should be working for the club. But just to jump back a little bit,
Yeah.
Just want to say hi to Sean because we haven't seen him for quite a while. Good to
Yep,
see
sorry.
you back, buddy.
Good to see you.
But I think, like Sean said, when we were talking about Archie Gray being the number 6, we discussed it before the match and kind of said the exact same thing. If you're going to put a player into a number 6 role, to me, Liverpool away on the day they're going to win the title is not the game that you put somebody into that role. I think it's almost the same as what Conte did with Spence. It's a bit
Fair.
of petulance. It's kind of like one of those, oh look, I told you he was going to fail type moments. And I think it's wrong. You put somebody like Archie Gray in there, you give him a couple of games before the Liverpool game, surely, and then play him there. But you look at it again today, back into a defensive role. It shows that he's got some trust to the player, but not enough to play him where he should be played. But yeah, I think all this in the know type things and rumors and thing, I don't like it. I think it has a place because all us fans want to hear these rumors, but it also detracts a little bit from the club and shows that somebody within the club is not trusted. And that to me means they need finding and kicking out the club. I don't care who it is. If that information's supposed to be tried to be kept secret, then get them out.
That's fair.
Just real quickly,
go on.
Dave, and I hate to sound like Ange with the Mr. Hindsight thing, but now that we know that Basuma played on Thursday, does the Archie Gray thing not make more sense now against Liverpool, given that Sarr's been well off it and he wanted to save Basuma for Thursday? Does that now not make a little bit more sense?
Well,
the Archie Gray injury wasn't out by the time, was it? It wasn't. There was no Archie Gray injury on Sunday.
Who's that? Oh, the Berg.
Sorry, the Bergvall injury. Wasn't known on Sunday, so that didn't happen until Tuesday, right, or Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday morning. So,
but he was saving Bergvall and Basuma for Thursday. So the option was to play Archie Gray or Sarr, right?
I don't know. I thought like Ange has spoken so derogatorily about Basuma, about him being sloppy and not paying attention and stuff. I presumed that Basuma was bottom of the pecking order. Personally,
yeah. It was just a thought. I was just thinking.
Don't do that, mate. Don't do that, buddy.
I know, right?
we'll get Steve in there as well, and then we'll get Drew's thoughts on them all and that, and then we'll get people's thoughts on the lineup and get their score predictions. Go on, Steve.
Take this for what it is, but this is exactly what I heard, that most of this information that's being leaked is from Scott Munn himself. And on the surface, it actually makes sense because, Scott Munn was brought in to do a specific job. That job had not progressed, and eventually he gets frozen out. And so on the surface, it makes perfect sense that potentially he's got an axe to grind. And he's also now tabbed to be leading the club at the end of the summer. So there's also an element of he's got nothing to lose by doing some of these type of things. But, here's the crazy part, right? And when you look at the only person who is actually talking to the media, answering questions that probably should be directed at Johan Langer, Scott Munn, Ange Postecoglou has been sitting front and center taking bullets for all of these guys. That to me is kind of the ironic thing here, is that when Ange Postecoglou is continuously running cover for some of all this incompetence, and then all of a sudden to have somebody literally just leak sensitive information like that, on the surface, it somewhat makes sense that a dude like Scott Munn would probably be the mole. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but that being said, that's what I was told. Take it for what it is.
Okay. Drew, do you want to have your say on them all?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like it. I thought it would be somebody from maybe the medical department, something like that, because I can't recall anybody in the first team or any first team coach kind of being frozen out or anything like that. And you would think that if they'd narrowed it down to somebody, they would take care of it if it was that close to the first team. So I thought it was kind of a couple of stages removed from that, and maybe somebody medical department, something like that. But Steve brings up a good point. Could well be Scott Munn. He kind of looks like a mole as well. So
Yeah, you go back to that photo when he was sitting with Daniel
dude,
Levy
the
in the
jeans.
airport and the face he's pulling. Yeah, the jeans and all. Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. He does look mole-ish, doesn't he? But look, let's go through the panel. Let's get their thoughts on the lineup, and then let's get their score prediction. Just quickly, Indiana Stone says, y'all make up all sorts of random conspiracies to fit your narrative, lads. Look, I understand that, these chat shows and that is not for everybody. At the end of the day, what I would say is everybody here, they do read a lot of articles during the week, do a lot of research and all that sort of stuff, so it's not based off absolutely nothing. And at the end of the day, it is opinion based. This is what fans do. They give their opinion. So look, I understand it's not for everyone. If it's not for you, then maybe I wouldn't be tuning in if it's not for you, But
if you want conspiracies, you go Sean Butler TV.
Exactly. If you want the real conspiracies, head to Sean Butler TV. He's doing a series over there. But look, let's start with
the owls. I tell you, it's the owls.
Actually, if we wanted to make up conspiracies, we'd just end up sitting there and saying maybe Tottenham Hotspur way is bugged and stuff. That's a real conspiracy. But we haven't gone down that route.
They're not real
and at the end of the day, maybe you're saying that in defense of Ange Postecoglou, but we are going off what Postecoglou says, that there's a mole inside the club. So again, logic doesn't really stack up there. But sorry, up to you, my man. I mean, what's your thoughts on the team and your score prediction? Is this good enough to be able to get a result out of West Ham today? Because if they beat us, they go ahead of us, don't they? That'd be a disaster.
Yeah. On paper, it's a pretty decent team. We'll see which Basuma turns up, because if the usual from the last few, I mean, he was pretty good on Thursday, I thought. He deserved his place looking at what was said. So hopefully he plays today. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win. I think these players are still playing for that position on Thursday, maybe even the final. I think it will be tight. I think it will be a dirty game. Probably why Richarlison's playing as well, to kick a few back as well. Kulu needs to step up, because I know he's just back from injury and it takes a while sometimes. But
Jack's very unhappy with Kulu at the minute.
Yeah, but look, when you come back from an injury, when you've been out for a while, I don't understand why people just expect everyone to come back running. It takes a little bit to get back into it. And from what he'd done beforehand, I think he deserves a little bit of slack. But he certainly needs to step up a little bit more. Odebear and Tell, I'm happy to see them two play. Perhaps Bissouma back to the beginning of Ange's system. Hopefully Kulu's going to be the one doing it. Danzo and Gray. Gray's been pretty decent as a centre-back coming in when he's at to Danzo. I like the look of him, so no problem there. Gray will be playing right back, won't he? Probably in Spence left back.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Hopefully they both have a good game. 2-1 I'm going. So big on you, Spurs.
Look, I think it's definitely a team capable of at least getting a result out of West Ham today, for sure. Jed Spence hopefully locking up Jared Bowen. He causes us a lot of problems. If you can lock him up, we definitely have a chance of getting something out of this game. Stevie, on to you, my man. What's your thoughts and what's your score predictions? And, also what's coming up on your channel?
Yeah, absolutely. So the starting 11 is pretty much what I expected. I think I had 10 out of the 11. The only discrepancy I had is, not knowing exactly when or if Sonny's going to be ready for that second leg up against Bodo. I would probably assume that Matisse Tell was probably going to get a rest for this one, having an eye for a starting, which is why I actually thought you might see Timo Werner come back into the squad specifically for this one, just from a numbers perspective. But outside of that, this is pretty much a lineup that I was expecting. The only thing that I'm going to say is that I thought it was a stroke of brilliance that Kulusevski gets a start, because he absolutely needed to start. That sharpness has to be on point for that second leg, if not for the final. And that only comes with increased minutes. And this is something that we kind of saw in that last game. He was able to get on his runs and put shots on net, but that sharpness was just not there. So a start for Kulusevski made the most sense. But The question is whether Odebear, Richarlison, and Tell is good enough to have some consistency today throughout the course of their 70, 80 minutes and capable of putting up 2+. I got to be honest with you, I don't know, and that's why I'm going to stick with my 2-2 draw.
Yeah, look, I wonder would many people take that 2-2 draw. Let me know in the chats. Richie, though, look, he's coming back with a point to prove he's scoring goals, assisting goals. Maybe he wants to hang on to his place at Tottenham. I might argue probably too little, too late, but I'll take it right now, and hopefully he can score again today because I do want to do one more pigeon before this guy leaves the club. It sends me into a different planet. But guys, make sure you please get over to Stateside Footy 27 and subscribe to Steve. A lot more content on the channel now, and you're also doing MLS watch along, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. Last night we did our weekly MLS game of the week that featured Inter Miami versus the New York Red Bulls. We got to see the brilliance of Leo Messi, and even though that this isn't prime Messi at the peak of his powers, he's still unbelievably good. And last night he put on an absolute masterclass in destroying New York Red Bulls. So it was just a brilliant game. Watch along is up there on the page. I recommend you guys have a look at it. It's absolutely fantastic.
David Beckham's the new Daniel Levy. I was looking at, the valuation of Inter Miami now, compared to when he first paid for it. That guy is going to be a billionaire if he ever sells that off. He's done some job there with Inter Miami, to be fair, David Beckham. Maybe, at one stage, you wonder, will he get, will he make his way to the Premier League or that? It'd be interesting. And I know he used to be a Tottenham fan, didn't he? Or he used to train with Tottenham and that when he was younger and that. So, and then at times in his career, later on in his career, he also changed that Hotspur way. So I wonder, will he ever get the finances together, maybe purchase a bit of Tottenham Hotspur? That'd be interesting. But guys, make sure you get across. Check out Steve, your home of the MLS. Drewski, what's your thoughts, my man? We had conversations around what to expect today and that. So what's your thoughts and what's your score prediction, lad?
Mute, bro.
Mute, lad.
Yeah, the first 11's kind of, it's not necessarily what I expected, but I'm all right with it. I'm more concerned with what the changes are going to be and how the changes are going to be made, because I would have thought that Richarlison, I don't think he's going to do 90 minutes. I don't think Tell's going to do 90 minutes. And I guess, I don't know who plays up front when Richarlison comes off, unless I guess Tell does get 90 and then you put somebody out on the left. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I still think I said yesterday 2-2. Cheeky Desmond. So yeah, I hope Basuma keeps on playing the way he did and he can put on another performance again. Interested to see Danzo again. So yeah, it should be all right. I'm kind of looking at, regardless of the situation we currently find ourselves in the league, somehow, some way, I'm looking forward to this. I don't know why.
Look, it's a derby game at the end of the day, passion, pride, fight, Yeah, and the winner ultimately has the bragging rights. I mean, it's a derby game, you got to be up for it. Don't get me wrong, it's a bit of a distraction, because of, what we have coming up next Thursday. But at the end of the day, it's still a derby game. Basuma's an interesting one, if he can have what would you call it? A renaissance. We'll go with that, a good art term for them artsy people out there. A renaissance, between now and the end of the season. Would it change people's mind on him a little bit, because to Sean's point, I sort of agreed that. I thought he was sort of bottom of the pecking order there, with the way Andrew's going on about him and stuff like that. But if he has a renaissance between now and the end of the season, will people give the guy another season to try and prove his worth? Be interesting. Shawnee, down to you. What's your thoughts on the lineup and your score prediction, lad?
I'm a little bit surprised that players like Bissouma that are probably going to be playing on Thursday are going to be exposed to and Richarlison or Tell. I'm not sure what Andrew's going to go with on the top line, but I'm a little bit surprised because West Ham have got nothing to play for but pride. And I would imagine that Graham Potter is giving them the instruction to essentially be dirty, be aggressive, be going hard, because all these Tottenham players, the ones that have got a sniff of getting a chance on Thursday or the final, are not going to want to go into any 50-50. They're not going to want to get injured. And I think there's going to be, like I say, at this stage of the season for West Ham, outside of the result being or the performance being affected by like an early card or something, even if you were to get protected by the referee, which we never do anyway, it doesn't matter, right? Even if there's a dirty challenge from West Ham and they go down to 10 men, if that leaves an injury on the player, then that's going to really have an impact. So any of these players that are possible shouts for Thursday. I'm surprised that they're in the team. And on that basis, the fact that Basuma played on Thursday at home, I would imagine that he's going to play on Thursday away because, we're going to be on the receiving end of a lot of pressure from them. And with Lucas Bergvall out, that's why I'm a little bit surprised that we went in the direction that we did. The rest of it makes a little bit of sense, but ultimately, again, Kulusevski, got to be careful. With Maddison going for a knee scan, we don't know if he's fit for Thursday. So if he's not, then Kulusevski's a risk to an injury today. And that's why I think that I'm a little bit concerned about some of the picks. That there's nothing to gain from today apart from pride and one spot in the league, which we can figure out after the fact anyway in the last 3 or 4 games. And so to me, I'm just like, I just want the team to get away without injuries for the most part. And in terms of the 11 itself, I think we're capable of overturning these bums. So I've got no concerns there. But I am actually going to go for a 1-1 draw. I actually subscribe to what Steve was saying before he dropped off. I think that there's going to be we struggle to score at the moment. We're not really creating enough chances at the top end of the pitch, or we're not putting away the chances we create. And so I'm a little bit. I don't think we're going to concede too many, but I don't think we're going to score too many either. I'm going to go for a 1-1 or a tight 2-1 victory. But for me, it's all about getting the players out healthy and hoping for the best. Dave, before I forget, mate, I have the game's not on TV over here. So if you guys are doing a watch along, even if you don't necessarily want me on the watch along, I'm happy to join the watch along. But if you don't want me on the watch along, then can I also just sit in the background and grab a viewpoint of your from?
Yeah, leave it with me. I'll let Jack know. The problem is with the watch along, we genuinely don't have time because our screen is set up with the 2 screens. Then you genuinely don't have time to change all that. But I will get you. I will get you over a link for the game because it's called an overlay and it's already set up with 2 screens.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
But I will say to Jack to get you the link for sure. Do you know what? I do understand what you're saying, though, in terms of, it is about getting through without really suffering any more injuries to any more players. You're absolutely spot on. I just wonder by looking at the lineup, I wonder, does Anja realise it's a London derby, wants to try and maybe win the game, that maybe he's gone with this lineup, with some of the players that you're talking about that probably will play Thursday, to try and actually go at West Ham in the first half, try and score a couple of goals and then take them off and give them rest ahead of Thursday. I wonder, is that what the game plan is today? But we'll know within the first few minutes anyway. But please, Drew, what's coming up on Spurs Diehards? And then we'll get Shawnee to plug his channel as well.
What am I doing? Next Friday, I have got, Spurs Diehards with my compadre Adrian, who I think is still in the chat somewhere. And we've got a couple of guests I'm still trying to finalise. And then I think later on today, I'm actually on Also Spurs with my boy Sean down here, I think. So that'll be after the game. And I think that's about it. Nice.
Well, so guys, make sure you get across to Spurs Diehards. Drew does a great show there on a Friday evening, gets on great guests, and make sure you get across, check that out, and make sure you smash that subscribe button. And also, make sure you follow him and Shawnee over to Also Spurs after the game today as well. And Shawnee, what's coming back up on Sean Butler? Well, not Sean Butler. Well, there is that too, but Spurs Talk Show. You're back pushing out the content, which is great to see, and I'm sure many people are relieved to have you back.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Yeah, so listen, I missed out on most of the transfer gossip last summer because of shenanigans. But as long as I can keep active, then look, the return of the Don, if that's going to be confirmed, with that comes 1,000 links a day. And with that,
he'll be back.
100%, right? 100%. And with as soon as the Don's back, as soon as those plates are spinning, then Sean's going to be spinning some transfer news, views, and clues for you daily. Out with the dog, Bugsy Malone. So you guys can to see that at Spurs Talk Show. And then I'm trying to double up the content. I'm trying to do a morning walk with the dog. And then in the afternoon or the evening, do a live stream. So yeah, twice a day, you should be able to see my ugly face talking absolute waffle about whatever's out there in the waffle of the Tottenham zeitgeist. And Spurs Talk Show, where you can find me. And if you are interested in conspiracies, then Sean Butler TV is where you can find some of that stuff alongside football finance and other topics that I'm interested in. Appreciate you having me.
No, it's good to have you back, my man. Make sure you you get back to doing the walks with Bugsy. You know, Bugsy was becoming a bit of a superstar there for a while. You know, she probably misses all the attention. So make sure
she knows it, bro. She knows exactly what she's doing as well. You know, she's a right little attention whore. That little girl.
You start seeing her change her run a little. You know, cut the arse up in the air a little bit more and stuff like that. You know, but look, guys, we're gonna call it a day there. I will be back with the watch long in about 15 to 20 minutes, Tom. I've just got a sambo there that I need to absolutely chow down. Spicy chicken cheese with mayonnaise, if anybody wants to know. So I'm going to absolutely chow that down before the watch along. But I want to say a massive thank you to Soren, to Drew, to Steve, and to Sean as well. Guys giving up their time to be able to come on and have these conversations and stuff like that. So really appreciate it, especially considering it's a bit of a nothing burger today. It's just a plain hamburger, no sauce, no lettuce, no onions and stuff like that. You know, next week.
Right.
Yeah,
just
next week. You know, next Thursday.
Wet spam burger, isn't it? Wet spam
burger.
There's
not even a slice of tomato to give you a little bit of like juice in there. Nothing at all. It's dry.
I also want to say a massive thank you to all you guys at home as well who continue to show up in numbers. You know, it's even for the Premier League games, despite there not being much to play for. So I really appreciate it. And I want to thank you to the people that have gone the extra mile today. Faz Radfire, Just a Harmless Potato. Then Ryan Trestain says, next season we will have to give the new manager 6 to 9 months just to give the team defending properly. So I will give him the whole season. No criticism. Not going to happen. Absolutely not going to happen. You know, we've known for quite some time we need to give managers chances. As soon as they start losing games, people are on their case. At the end of the day, we just want to win games right now. This whole thing of time. Look, you can say that now. You'll be the first one on the manager's case once he starts doing things you don't like right now. Let's be honest. And then we also got Made in Attitude. Okay, not a bad name. Member for 30 months. As long as you don't give us attitude, that's fine. They say it's just a theory, football theory. If you know, you know. Coys. Anyone know what that phrase is about? This is where we need Dermo.
It's just a theory, a football theory. No idea.
No. I'm sorry, mate.
I need to know, though. When someone drops the old, if you know, you know, you really want to know. I want to be part of the people that know.
Yeah. I used to do that in school sometimes, you know. I'd be like, oh,
I know nothing.
Yeah. But
there are known knowns.
I'm sorry, we don't quite get the reference. No one in the chat, I don't think, understands it either. But look, we will be back for the watch along. Maybe come in there and explain it. But look, guys, big London derby. Imagine if we can win this and then go and win Thursday night. It'd be an unbelievable week to be a Tottenham fan. So let's get behind the boys. Let's see what they can do. And just hopefully 5 minutes in, they don't suck the belief out of me. But guys, well, actually, no, I'm only messing. No, we'll move on. Guys, I'll see you back here for the watch along. As always, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs. Good.